fine. Finance Committee. As a practical matter, the administration has chosen to file a new ordinance. I think it's a little unclear as far as whether that includes all the amendments from the original one till now, or whether it just through the 28th. The council members should have received from Mr. Lloyd the administration changes and corrections dated, well, they're dated 9/4, 9/8, 9/14, 9/23, 10/12, and 10/14, I believe. They're in 7 different sheets, but I think from a do you know, I mean, because we don't really have a new booklet or anything else to that extent.
Right. Russ Lloyd, City Controller. We included this as an amended budget, and the totals that I sent you, and it was a PDF, includes all these changes.
Okay.
And that's what's on the cover page. It includes everything. So if council chooses not to take one of these pages, we'll have to adjust the totals.
Very well.
We can do that.
Okay. That helps me a little bit. Okay. Thank you. So as a way of going about this, because this can be very messy, what I'd like to do is I have a number of amendments that I would like to make. I'd like to do it kind of by person, and we can vote on it as we go around. So with that being said, in addition to the mayor's administration changes and corrections, except for sheet 6, I would offer those as amendments to be included in this year's budget. I mean, they're already included, but kind of reaffirm that. Secondly, or next, in METS 101-1603-111-600, it's an overtime. I'd like to cut an additional $75,000 out of overtime. In Police 101-1901, also the overtime account, which is 411-600, cut an additional $140,000 out of that.
Excuse me, when will we get to ask questions?
After I'm done.
Okay.
In the Fire Department, 101-2101, overtime account, cut $28,000. $28,000. Sheets.
What was it on police?
140. 140,000.
Fire or the police?
That police was 140.
Have police protection.
Police is 140.
I thought you said
Fire 28.
Fire 28,000.
Correct.
And what was MET's, just to recap?
75.
Okay, thank you.
We've already eliminated sheet 6, so I'll pass over that. In on page 69, Arena, which is 474-5857, I believe. Double check this number. 474-5857. I'd like to reduce that budget to a total of $1,340,433.50, which will reduce the capital or the contractual services by $250,000. On page 67, Victory, I'd reduce that contractual service to, the total amount will be $346,799.50, reducing that by $350,000. That is 474-5851. Victory.
I'm worried about police protection.
That's out of LIT. Those both are out of LIT. DMD, LIT, which is 474-5840-439-50, which is a blight elimination. We'll zero that out, so it's a $100,000 additional cut.
No blight elimination?
That's the that is for Brownfield's administration of the blight elimination program that's been proposed. It's already been cut by the mayor by $210,000. This will eliminate it. DMD Riverboat 446-5929-439050, which is the blight elimination program. This is for the purchase of blighted homes, which the mayor has already reduced by over $1 million. We will cut that out. We'll cut the remaining $460,000 out of it to zero that out, and that's out of Riverboat.
Can't wait to hear.
Out of Riverboat also 446-5919-436030, which is the used motor vehicle highway. It used to be paid out of LIT, which is for paving and alleyways and those sort of things. It was $2.6 million. Last year was $1.8 million. I'd like to make that $1.8 million a year again, which is an elimination of $800,000 out of that account.
No potholes filled.
446-5919. 47 out of LIT 474-5842 or 474-5842-439050. Zero that account out to it's $20,000. It'll go to zero. It's the Voices program.
Voices.
Sure, why not?
Which program is that?
Voices, Leadership Evansville.
Leadership Evansville.
Yes. Out of LIT, beginning on page 62, all of 63, all of 64, and all of 65, and the first matter of 66, which is the 474 accounts from 5810 to 5836. That totals some $555,000. Those will be reduced to $325,000. Those are local grants and subsidies for various funds. And I guess I look at it this way, is that in past years we've had $6-7 million in LIT, and that's roughly 10%. If we kind of look at it as a tithe to our community agencies and nonprofits. Unfortunately, over the course of several years, we have continued to shift more and more money from our general fund into our LIT without regard to that, which has caused many more problems with our budget. I still am committed to 10%, but unfortunately, we have less than $3 million to play with now. And so that reflects 10% of our available budget.
So you're saying cut it 325?
No, we're cutting it down to 325. It's about a $225,000 reduction.
Right, you're cutting it 225.
Cutting it 225, yes. With the mayor's consent, out of Police Riverboat, we have currently committed $270,000 for 35 leased vehicles. I would ask that the mayor consent to adding $730,000 to that account for the outright purchase of $1 million worth of police vehicles. I don't believe it's right for us to pass down that debt to the next council. That should be enough to get about 30 new vehicles, which we should be able to commit to for future years without invading principle. With that said, I believe that should bring our budgets into the red on all of those major funds, such as LIT, Riverboat, are into the black of the LIT and Riverboat, and further reduce our general fund to an amount less than or flat to last year when you consider what the parking is. With that, those are the amendments that I'm proposing in addition to the mayor's amendments, and I will open it up to questions.
Can we summarize by fund, the combination of the cuts in 101, what that total be?
That number will be approximately, let me, remember, we're not really, we're not doing anything with regard to parks, but it's about, that number is approximately $300,000 from what the last mayor's budget was. So it'll bring that down to about $85,250,000.
85 million?
It's about $85,250, give or take. I'm not getting into the nickels and dimes of it. The LIT would be reduced by $945,000. so almost $1 million, which will bring that back under $16 million, which again puts it into the black. And the riverboat fund would be reduced by about, let's see, give me the number here, about $530,000, which will bring it down to about $12,850,000. And I'll just say that other things that have been discussed with regards to cuts and the like, or actually not increases, but I think that this is a responsible budget given the fact that we have reduced the amount of money that we intend to collect next year. We know that we've been running deficits year over year. As far as the reduction at the Victory and the Ford Center, I, for one, cannot stomach the potential loss of $1.3 million at those facilities. We're either going to run them right or we're going to close them down, that being the Victory. $700,000 loss of the Victory is just unconscionable to me. As far as overtime and everything, that's overtime. I suggest that we do a better job at how we utilize our officers and safety officers, police and fire. We'll still be able to maintain our roads with $1.8 million, and we're going to buy some vehicles instead of lease them, because if we lease 35 vehicles this year, that means next year we're paying $270,000 and we're getting nothing. And same with the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. And I think that in the budget hearings we discussed that the police are going to need probably 30 cars a year to maintain their fleet. If we do that on a 5-year cycle, we're going to commit $1 million a year to the purchase of new police cars, and we won't have to lease them out.
What was that number again for the police vehicles?
I believe it's an additional $730,000.
Okay.
That'll get us to $1 million. It was at $270,000.
Is that out of Riverboat?
That's out of Riverboat. So we're cutting $800,000 out of paving and alleyways. We're cutting $460,000 out of blight elimination. So that's $1.26 million, and then we're adding back $730,000.
But you're completely cutting out the entire blight elimination program, correct?
We will still have money available for demolition. There's still $500,000 committed to demolition, but there would not be any money contributed towards the purchase of any homes at this time.
May I just ask how you came up with all this?
Hard work.
Well, I will be here next year. I'm already elected.
Are you saying that I haven't done my job?
I find it very, would you let me speak?
Well,
I find it very
accusing something.
offensive that you're just now bringing this up to all the council members and letting them know, and you're putting this on the floor right now.
What cuts have you suggested?
I have made a few suggestions
How many
to
phone calls have you
Councilman
made to
Adams.
me? How many emails have
I have
you
made some phone
made?
calls to you. You don't return phone calls.
How many emails have you sent me?
I have not. I've been sending them to our president.
Yeah, well,
Excuse me, you really
I-
shouldn't address.
I understand. I understand.
Councilman O'Daniel, just
I
real
just have a
quick.
question.
Can I get the totals on the Victory and the Arena?
Yes.
Okay.
The numbers again? I'm
Yes.
sorry. They were totals, and so
5857 was the Ford Center, and you cut that contractual.
yeah, I think that's probably the best way to, where it would probably best come from. And then, so the Arena was, 5857, and then the Victory was
5851.
5851.
I just want to know what the cuts were.
essentially it was 350 and 250. Victory 350 and Ford Center 250.
Okay, thank you.
I do have another question.
Yes.
What will this do to the EPD and the fire department, public safety, which is very near and dear to all of our constituents? What will this cut do to public safety?
Well, this is overtime, and so
So they're
I
just
think,
supposed to go home after 8 hours?
I think that's up to the chief of police and the other individuals who run the department to most efficiently run their department.
But we all know that when they're in the middle of an investigation or if something's going on, you can't just say, oh, hang on, my 8 hours are up. I'll catch you tomorrow.
Hold on a second. Is there a representative from the police department who make comment about this larger cut out of them?
Thank you.
And I can make a comment on the fire, because I understand why the numbers for the fire department.
How much are we going to cut out of the police?
140 additional.
I'm Stephanie Cox. I'm a captain with the police department. It's hard to predict, as Missy said, over time, because it's such an unpredictable. We can't really figure out what's going to happen as far as the natural disasters or any major crimes that would call for us to have extended crime scenes and things like that. We have to keep in mind that 2016 is a presidential election year, so we don't know if there's going to be dignitaries coming to town, which has a huge drain on resources as well. It's just something that's so dynamic you can't predict over time because you don't know what's going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, it would be difficult on it, yes.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever gone to the EVSC and asked for if they can pay us the money that they owe us for the, because I know we're supplying security
liaison officers.
to the schools. I mean, that's a significant number.
I'm going to have to defer to the chief on that.
I know, I guarantee it's a big number.
As you recall, there used to be a contract that was never actually enforced, and I think the chief indicated last year that we're not going to be taking anybody out of the schools, so, I mean, I think it's where it was left.
But, you know, just to give you an example, this year with the Blue Angels, you know, they told us we weren't going to have them, then we were, and that's just, even that alone was just a huge thing. And it's the events that we can't predict which tend to hurt us the most. Sure. So we're talking about SWAT call-outs, we're talking about if a tornado came through like it did a few years ago. It's just you have to call in every available resource, and even one major event can really drain us quite a bit. So,
Well, and this is also about training and the like, and whether or not those can be done during work hours and
Right.
when not. And, you know,
And-
we're aware of, obviously, some of the payroll and where the overtime comes from, and a lot of it is in SWAT and K-9 and those sort of things. And so we're asking that there may be a reduction in that overtime number and do it more during work hours.
Certainly.
It's the only way to force that to happen, because it hasn't happened in 4 years.
right, and we have taken steps to do that, especially with our training. We've reduced that quite a bit as far as overtime. And also with our K-9 unit, we've tried to schedule the dogs for different shifts to make sure that there is representatives on each shift without, you know, having to call people in. We want to make sure. And even with our SWAT officers, we force them to take different shifts, certain ones on each shift, to reduce the number that have to be called in for a major event. But again, it's just one event is so expensive, can potentially be so expensive, and it's so unpredictable that it's hard to say. I can't stand here and say that $140,000 wouldn't hurt us, because I just don't know what's going to happen.
Mr.
And
Chairman.
training can come from forfeiture accounts as well, if need be.
Hey, I've got a question,
Okay.
too. Is any of this overtime money, is it the comp sell back money?
Yes.
Or it is? Okay, so it's not all just dirt.
Yeah.
Don't your officers get paid like time and a half over
Yes.
their schedule, and it's got to be paid like the next pay period?
Well, if
Is that
they're over
correct?
200, if they built up over 200
Yeah, they can build up to
hours,
200, right?
Yes.
And anything over 200 has to be paid back.
Right.
Has
And
to be
one-
bought back by the city, time and a
Yes,
half.
that's correct. And and you brought up made me think of another point. A big chunk of our overtime is reimbursed by state and federal grants. So far this year, we've been reimbursed about $344,000. So we anticipate at least $400,000 by the end of the year to be reimbursed, and that goes back into the general fund. So that's a pretty big chunk of overtime that we do get back from state and federal grants.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a
Yes.
question? Okay, and those are different funds. I mean, when you're buying time, that's one fund. When you've got active overtime for the year, that's a different fund. And I really appreciate you being here to answer questions. My 2000, I don't know if it was this year, I think you guys took a trip to Disney, and officers were paid to take that trip with children. And what was the cost of that trip?
I don't have that information. I don't.
But you can see where potentially we see that as, you know, when you're paying overtime or salary to take kids on a vacation, please, not criticizing the program.
I understand.
You know, but it's how we handled it that could, or when we're paying people to be at a fundraiser that has that perception that you have overtime hours to burn, which I think is probably what drives some of the questions.
Certainly.
I mean, we want people to be paid, and,
Right.
you know, obviously nobody's advocating for less people on the
Right.
street when there's an actual need for that.
And I understand that, and we certainly can be careful, and certainly there's always room to critique what we've done in the past and be careful about what we're going to do in the future, but I just want to make it known that there's also so many unpredictable factors that will pop up, so we just need to keep that in mind, too. One major event could wipe us out pretty good.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I mean, obviously, I look at all that
Yes.
when I'm looking at
Certainly.
just historically what we've actually spent, as well as when you look at, when we fund like full-time salaries, that's done assuming that we have a full allotment of officers for the entire year.
Yes.
And there's always some, 5%, 4% that are retiring or or on leave or whatever it may be. And
Sure.
those full-time salaries aren't necessarily being used at that point.
Right.
So there's some cushion even within that number.
Could I
that can
just-
obviously be moved around.
Can I make a point here to clarify something? I just text messaged the chief of police, and he said 0 overtime is paid for the Disney trip. So let's just squash that right here.
All right.
That is, there's
they're
no
not on
overtime
Why do we
paid.
always start rumors like that?
That's why I cleared it up.
Thank you.
So I'll be glad to text Chief Bowen any questions that come up from council.
They were paid. They were paid, so I suppose they'd be paid regardless, but it was our understanding they were paid and didn't have to use vacation time for it.
And I'm sorry, I don't know if they had duty days or not.
I'll be glad to text and get that.
If I may.
Yes,
add.
John.
Okay. I passed out to you a history of our salary ordinances. Now, this is complete. Now, everybody thinks that we have 1% increase in our cost here. When I went back and looked at this, our increase went from 3.18% in the prior year, and we're now up 4.47%. Now, what's in that number is overtime. It's also these temps that we have, temporary people that we have. And the other is this other, I talked to Russ about this. It's something that's used in longevity and some other deals like that. And that number is like $2.1 million. And what's astonishing about that number is between the police and fire, that's nearly $5 million, that number is.
Now, you're talking about in the other, which
That
classifies
other category.
Right, with the, like you said, the longevity.
Yeah.
I'm going to let Laura
That's
explain a little bit more.
huge number.
Okay.
What I'm noticing that we have flatline revenues, but yet though we have an increase by 0.5% in the overall cost of personnel. Now, this is not just fire department or police department. This is collectively. I
As
want to
far
make
as
that clear.
longevity,
Pardon me?
as far as longevity, I know how much every officer gets for longevity, and I also know when they get new longevity amount. For this year, we had $94,000 added to longevity because of their hire date. Okay, so what we got budgeted for in the 411-500 does not cover what we're spending in longevity at all. I know to the penny what we spend for each officer, or what needs to be budgeted. Luckily, we have empty lines, so I have money. I've borrowed money from overtime. Let's see, what else? The temporary lines that pay school safety guards, we haven't increased that in a number of years. And any excess usually goes for longevity, which is a contractual item. I don't know what else you said.
The point is, I mean, everything in that line is contractual, so we really don't have any wiggle room on that particular area.
I don't bump up anything in salaries at all. It's to the penny. I have a worksheet that does it for me. I know how much every person's supposed to get all year long.
And we appreciate what you do.
Okay.
Thank you.
If I may ask a
Yes.
follow-up question. So the longevity raises, those are the things that are negotiated every time the collective bargaining agreement comes up. They're longstanding, they go back several mayors. Is that a correct statement?
I have pay scales to 1983.
Okay, now, I used to be a department head. I understand if you don't have enough money in your longevity line item, if somebody's sick or family medical not pay, you grab that money. But you have had to use overtime to pay the contractually mandated longevity raises. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how much, just a ballpark, how much
I've
of
moved
it?
$60,000 right now.
How much?
60,000.
60,000. So if you're cut 140,
Yeah.
what are you going to do to pay your longevity? Do you
We're
know?
not- we're higher.
You just break the contract then, or we force you to?
Well, it's not coming out of longevity. It's coming out of overtime.
But overtime at times is used to pay longevity. I mean, that's
Well-
what we do at the end of the year. All of those ordinances,
Except
where
that-
there's money left in a line item, you move to cover the line item that's short.
I understand that, but this year, she's indicated that she's looked at that, and that it's to the penny as far as what the raises and, or what the raises would be, as well as what the longevity would be. So, and of course, we don't know what the contract may or may not say,
Right.
because it's not signed yet.
Right.
Is the total, how much, we just cutting 75,000 in overtime, is that it?
For Mets.
For Mets, but what, from the police, how much from police?
Another 140 from what the mayor had cut,
140?
and then 28 from fire.
I know, our total budget for overtime for the whole city is almost $3.2 million. If you look at my analysis I gave you, the temps are $3.4 million. I mean, these numbers are, I mean, wow, that's a lot of overtime. Not, I grant you, that's not all yours. We got a lot over there in the utility department. About $1.2 million in the utility department, and you folks take up $1 million of it, at least before these cuts.
But it's public safety.
Missy, I understand that. But, what I've been looking at, wait until you see that what I just gave you at the end of August. We're running out of money. It's going.
I am
So, I
not
mean,
going to
so
do
we gotta have
cuts
to raise
to our public
taxes.
safety. That is just, that, I mean,
Well, then we need to
can't
raise
tell them
taxes.
you work 8 hours and you just go home. I did just receive a text back from our chief. Chief Boland said he took vacation for that. Some officers did, but if it was on the officer's duty day, they went as their duty day. They didn't get paid anything for their days off, that they were out of town mentoring youth from areas that they've been criticized in the past for not having a presence.
Yes.
I have a question about the outright purchase of vehicles as opposed to the lease. I mean, I'm not sure who can answer this, but these are leased to purchase, basically.
It's zero,
Yes.
yeah, it's, you own it at the end of 5 years.
And what's the difference? Has anyone calculated? I mean, do we know what interest rate we pay on these vehicles over 5 years? How much that costs us as opposed to, $250,000 a year for 4 years, drawing 1% interest or whatever? I mean, it sounds to me like it's probably a net. I mean, we probably don't save any money. We just lose our reserve. We lose that cash money that we have for availability.
Well,
for
that's
other
why we have
projects.
$14 million in the riverboat fund for these things.
We paid about 1.4% interest.
How much is it?
About 1.4% interest with the last
1.4%.
lease, right.
Okay. So we're saving 1.4%, because last I checked, we might get, 30 basis points out of the Hoosier Fund, Russ? Maybe? 36 basis points,
So
so
we're looking at
we're saving
1%.
1% a year on $1 million. I'll take 10,000. I mean, that pays for half of one of our salaries. So,
I went back and looked at it seemed like from 12 through 15, we've been pretty consistent with the number of people in the police department. It's been 321, and then this year's going up to 322, it looks like. My question, when we went through back in 2009, I can't recall, did we were not forced to reduce staff by, I mean, the number of officers. I don't recall that ever happening when I was on this council. Did we lose? We didn't lose any, did we?
We didn't lose police officers. We lost some rank through attrition.
Some ranks?
And they moved them down to patrol.
Yeah.
I don't know the numbers right off the top of my head. but
This
I-
city is very, very lucky because I talked to Catherine Fernello up there. She was a controller of South Bend, It was a bloodbath up there. They had to cut $18 million out of their budget during that crisis
Yeah,
of
during that
2009.
crisis, we actually got a cops.
I'm sorry?
During that crisis, we got a cops hiring grant that helped us a lot.
Well, I know, what I'm saying is, I think the city's done a good job up to this point of keeping their, keeping their police levels where we should be. I'm just concerned about going forward.
Any other comments, members of council? Yes.
And I think, I have a couple of comments. This is just related to the EPD. I mean, obviously, my understanding is by spending $1 million this year, that when you go into budget next year, you're in a much better position to buy cars, and you don't have that $250,000 payment over your head. And so I think that's actually a good idea. What I heard your motion on the mayor's budget minus page 6,
Correct.
How much money is that minus page 6 in terms of
Well, it's $56,000, or $59,000 is page 6.
that was $59,000 that was being put back in the budget that you're not
Correct, that
including.
we're not going to include.
So that $59,000 would stay out.
Right.
And then, and I think when you're talking about the arena and the Victory, you're capping those losses.
Yeah, the way that works is the budget indicates the Victory Theater to have a budget of $690,000, $696,799.
Operating deficit.
But what that is that's the loss.
No, and look, we've been talking about the $700,000 that the Victory loses every year that we've been here.
I think it was only 300 when we started. 350 maybe.
They transferred management companies, and it hasn't had an impact on that. And I think it really just pushes back to the drawing board of what do you do. And then, so the budget would be legitimately flat. We would have a budget that, in terms of the general fund, civil city, $85,250,000. That would be comparable to what was approved for 2015. I mean 14, 15. Sorry.
Less the parking meter.
Okay, and
Which
then
is apples to apples.
when you talk about the LIT being reduced, $945,000, that would put us in a position that for next year, we would not spend more than we received.
Correct. The LIT would bring in approximately, just the local option income tax brings in about, was it right at 15 million? And then we receive some income from parking police.
Okay.
As well as $1 million from Venue Works.
Okay.
And so that brings that number up just over $16 million.
And so by making the cuts that you're proposing, it would operate in the black
That's
as
correct.
opposed to in the red.
That's correct.
And then my last question, when you look at the riverboat, the $530,000, and that's that difference after you're moving money to purchase the police cars, that takes that budget to $12,850,000. And so what I understand is that you're forcing about $1 million into a savings account, or into savings.
That's correct. It's, because you'll get, that's exactly right. And we need it more and more.
Okay, and then so I have a comment on that. In terms of the blight, the auction that...
done with the police for now?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The auction that we worked to prevent the 200-ish houses that we were trying to stop from being auctioned that we know are uninhabitable, that auction is happening next week. So we have not been able to do it. It was initially knocked out of whack by the mayor's cut of the program and then the delay of the budget. So those houses are going to proceed to auction. And with that, there is no real plan now for those funds. But as we come around to next year, when we are to have a tax sale next May, the new statute, Senate Bill 415, gives us a couple of different programs to develop whether we're pulling properties out of the tax sale saying they're not fit for tax sale, or we're taking them through a legal process where we deem that they're abandoned, which dramatically reduces the redemption period. But for that to benefit the citizens, there's another component that needs to be developed, and that's the tax abatement program that our county government could put into place, where once a property is deemed abandoned, it's offered for sale to people who are going to invest in it, and then they receive a tax abatement for a period of time on that increased value in the property. And so when I look at cutting these funds, there's really not a program in place, but as we come around to next year, there's basically money in the bank in the Riverboat Fund that as that's developed into an actual plan, that the next council and administration could pull from there at the appropriate time. So I don't think we're done working on blight, and I appreciate the creation of that safety net, because the blight program has been a pretty big deal to me, and I've spent a lot of time on it. So I want to make sure that's understood when we look at cutting those funds. We're not walking away from blight, but we missed the boat on stopping that auction. And that's all I have on that.
Any other comments, members of council? Okay. What I'd like to do then is go ahead and offer and ask for a motion, or make the motion on these amendments, and then if we get a second, then I'll open up to public comment, and then we can then move to other amendments from other council members. So I'd make a motion to adopt.
Mr. Chairman, can we do it this way? I'd like to see it broken down. First, we do amendment on just the overtime,
Okay.
because we have about 4 or 5 different amendments, different areas. If we can just break it down that way.
Well, do you want to do it with the first adopting the mayor's budget with the exception of page 6 or sheet 6 plus the overtime?
Yeah. I'd like to separate the overtime, just make a motion to
Okay.
accept the
Let's-
mayor's.
I'll do it this way then. I'll make the motion to accept the mayor's amendments and all other amendments I've made with the exception of the 3 overtime accounts that I've listed, and that's METS 101-1603, Police 101-1901, and Fire 101-2101. So I'll make that motion. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and I'll take any comments from members of the audience at this time. Anybody want to step forward? Please come forward and state your name.
My name is Ron Mottler, Sr. I live at 2529 South Ruston Avenue here in Evansville. And I got something to say. Under the Winnicky administration, the crime rates in Evansville have risen sharply, up 13% in 2012, up 1%
Sir?
in 2013.
Sir, can I interrupt you for just one
Yes.
second? Do you have any comments on the budget? Not crime rates, but the budget itself.
Oh, I've got a question on what has the Winnicky administration done with the $700,000 of drug seizure money that they had in the coffers to fight crime?
Okay. I think that's probably not a budgetary issue because we're trying to pass a budget, not how we've dealt with expenditures in the past. But we do not budget for police forfeiture money. That money is not exactly known year over year. It is in a separate account now, and it does have to go through a process by which it gets audited every year. Now, there have been numerous statements made and things offered over the last year or two with regards to how that's been expended. Some would argue that it may not have been expended wisely. Others are clearly for police training and things that obviously make their job easier and the city safer. But I'm not sure that that's truly a budgetary question at this point.
Right, thank
Okay? Any other members of the audience wish to comment? Please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the City Council. I just had a few concerns, and I first want to urge you, as I think you are doing tonight, to adopt a conservative, thoughtful, realistic, and I would say achievable budget. And I appreciate all the conversation that's gone to this point. There are concerns that I have, and first of all, the first concern has to do with the relationship of the Water and Sewer Department and how they are used when our budget at the end of the year is not in a place where we start the next year in a positive tone. So I want to make sure that we're looking at where we are at the end of the year in 2015 to start 2016, where we don't have to borrow from the Water and Sewer Department to show a positive balance. And I hope we're remembering that this evening while we're talking about the budget. The other major concern that I have has to do with the fact that in 2014, in August, we had $11.6 million of unpaid expenses. This year, that's increased to $17 million. And what that means to me is that at the end of the year, we might be holding over more bills than we have in the past. We used to hold in over about $2 million, which was always the end of October, November, December. That rose to 3 point something. I think we're at $5 million. And I'm very concerned that when it gets to next year, because of the unpaid bills and where we are, that might go to $7 million. We have to take control of the budget, and I simply do encourage and appreciate everything that you're doing tonight to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the audience wish to comment? Okay.
I got a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question for the controller. Do we stop paying our vendors in October?
No, we're paying our vendors.
So you will pay, I had heard that the controller's office shuts down at the end of October and that you don't issue any other checks except paychecks.
No, that's not true.
So you will pay vendors after October?
All the way to the end of the year. Now, there's some that, just depending on the situation, they may be held over. But we have check runs all through the rest of the year.
Oh, thank you.
Doc, you have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I read your suggestions right, you want to knock 325 out of local grants and subsidies. Can you delineate?
225.
Yeah. Can you delineate which grants, which subsidies, which?
Well, I would like to let the mayor's office make that determination. However, if we are going to have to do it piecemeal, then we'll just do a percentage of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just for clarification, though, on the LIT grants, the only organization that's completely zeroed out is Evansville Voice.
That was that wasn't even a grant. That was a separate. That was like BridgeLink and everything else. It was separate than everything else. The other ones were paid for in the grants and subsidies aspect.
But that's the only one that's
That's correct. And ultimately, the rest of them are going to be subject to the mayor. If they want to zero out, money to the DMD, which is $100,000, then they'll be able to do that. If they want to do it to Aurora, they can do that. I mean, it's really up to the mayor's office, the administration, to decide how they wish to distribute that money.
Chairman,
Yes.
that's a 41% reduction in the overall. I don't know if you want to just present as a 41% reduction in those? Or?
I think I've outlined those, at least the sections, and so I think the mayor, is that sufficient for your purposes to know what those numbers are? Or would it be easier just to say it's a 40% across the board? Now, I truly think it's be more beneficial for the administration to cap it at 325 and let you decide. But
I mean, it's specifically identifying all the nonprofits that receive grants. And it goes from 474-5810 to 474-5844, it looks like to me. And there's, I think, Mesker Zoo's in the middle there. That'd be an exception.
No, well, it is, yes, that would be, well, it's not the it's not 474-584, I think it would go through 474-5836.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Which is the top there.
Okay.
All right? Because after that, you get into the mayor's LIT, which is the Granicus software, which was zeroed out already. Okay. Yes, Marco?
Marco DeLucio from the City Attorney's Office. Is there a copy of, I mean, we didn't, this first we've heard some of these numbers tonight. Is there a copy that would be available for us to have?
You may have that at the end. I don't know. I don't have one.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
There's been a first and a second. Let's go by, so we'll bring it to vote at this point on these amendments. We'll probably ought to do a individual vote on this. And this will be to approve the amendments as offered, which have been recited previously, with the exception of the overtime.
Go ahead and add that one.
Okay. All right. Let's, okay. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and we'll reopen that on the overtime issue if when, yeah. Anybody want to discuss the overtime issue? Okay. With that, I would make a motion to accept all the amendments as previously set, which is, I guess, an amendment to the amendment. Do I have a second? Okay. All right. Let's go by individual vote.
Okay. Councilman O'Daniel?
Aye.
Councilman Adams?
No.
Councilwoman Brinkoff Riley?
Aye.
Councilman Friends?
Aye.
Councilman Lindsay?
Aye.
Councilman McGinn?
No.
Councilwoman Mosby?
I'm very concerned with what this is going to do to our city, and I'm here for another 4 years, and this just really, really alarms me. I vote no. I'm for my voice, for my constituents.
Councilwoman Robinson?
Aye.
Councilman Weaver?
No.
I believe it's 5-4 to accept the amendments, so that will be part of the budget moving forward. Does anybody else wish to offer any amendments to the budget as it's been presented so far?
Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
I guess what disturbs me about this is from the operational standpoint. I understand we talked a lot about the capital, and I understand that capital being out of the riverboat. I strongly urge we should pay as we go, not put any more leases. If you know, we have now leases up to this year. We have almost $1 million a year in leases. That would crank us up to about 1.3, 1.4.
That's why we wanted to
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I go along with that. But I guess what really stirs me is when I and I brought this to the mayor's attention, by the way, when we met. You know I did. I passed this out. When I'm looking at the operational stand of things, operationals being where we have payrolls, all in parks and all that. When you couple the fact that we do indeed have $17 million, I've been in this council now 8 years, and I've never seen payables that high. Bills are unpaid. I've never seen them that high. That's fact. I went back. I got every one of my blue books. I don't lose any of them. Got a file, just stacked back in my office. Never been $17 million in August. We're now at 11.6 million was a year ago, so that's a change of almost $5.5 million increase in accounts payable. Bills that have not been paid. That brings our operational efficiency for a fiscal year ending August of this year of $14 million. I'm going to repeat that. $14 million more than we spent than we took in. And that's based upon you got to take the change in the money that you owe out there. This scares the dickens out of me when I see that. The previous fiscal year, give you a comparison. The previous fiscal year was only $3 million. That's an increase of $11 million in one 12-month period of time. And we're starting to talk about $75,000 of overtime and $140,000. That is a pimple on a buffalo's butt. I can't say it any better. And that's fact. Now, I talked to Russ about these things, these numbers out there. Now, when I look at that, and then when I look and see, when I did my analysis and looking at this, and we have nearly a 4.5% increase in the cost of having our employees, and we have some great employees, great police force, police fire department, and all the other support functions in our city. But when I see all that, I think, oh my gosh, we are now, what we have here now, what I did, if you take 50% of the 945,000, the LIT, 50% normally should go to operations. So that gets us 500 grand. I'm seeing a $3 million shortfall in these numbers because we're not going to collect more than $82 million. I went back historically. We won't get more than 82 out of this in the general fund.
You mean for next year or this year?
No, I'm talking about in the 16.
Okay, next year.
Yeah, I'm 16. If it gets 82, we're going to be lucky. So that means we got about a $3 million shortfall. Now, we take what Connor brought up, that gives us about $2.5 million shortfall here in the general fund, in general funds. We didn't even talk about the Parks Fund. The Parks Fund is $1 million by the time you take into golf and you put them together. We're $1 million upside down based upon this analysis that's been presented to you tonight. That's $1 million. And we're only taking out of the Parks Fund 100 grand maybe.
Not that much.
Not that much. I mean, we're short on parks by at least $500,000. At least 500 based upon this analysis that I've done here, $1 million. Compared, by the way, let me give you a comparison to the prior year. When you look at the prior year comparison, it was only $300,000. It was, we had parks a year ago was only up, matter of fact, it had a positive number of $137,000. That's a big swing from the number that I'm showing today of $825,000 negative to a positive number last year. That's almost $1 million. That parks needs work done on it. We're going to be so much upside down that parks, it's incredible. You know, with all that said, I mean, I'm looking at this, and what I like to do, I think we got to go a little deeper here. First of all, the EPA. There's no reason why we need the EPA. That's $200,000. $252,000 on the EPA. The IDAM, the Indiana Department of Economic Management, handles that. They do the permitting. Environmental management. Yeah, thank you. Environmental management, and they do a fine job. I mean, there's $250 there we could pick up. Last year we cut, I know, 100 grand or better out of the IT budget. I don't think we even touched that this year.
I think it got added back in. It's $2.6 million.
Yeah, I mean, why can we not have an amendment to trim back 100 or 200 out of there?
It's contractual.
Bottom line. You would think it would be subject to funding.
Well,
but anyway, I'm just telling you, that's an easy save.
Well,
right there, I just have recommended $500,000. The other side of it is when I look at the analysis of the salary ordinances. I would like to recommend a 15% cut in temporary salaries. That's $2.4 million.
So that'd be what, $360,000?
That's $360 there. I would like to offer that up. And the temporary salaries. Myself, I'd have gone for 25% across the board on the $1,150,000 overtime. That's for every single department, not just any one of them. When I looked at all that, all those cuts in there, 15, 25, 25, I think I gave you all this up there. You see it. That comes into a $2 million savings, but it's not in all of the operational funds. You got about $400,000. No, I take that back. $350,000 in the utility department. But those numbers, again, is closer. This budget is not balanced the way we have it. We presented it here. Still have the same problems.
I don't disagree with you that we're not going to tap into more funds again this next year. However, I think that my statement last year was that I thought this was a 3 to 4 year process by which we get a hold of this, that you can't balance a budget in 1 year. If there's a commitment by all sides to find those savings necessary to bring it back in and then allow the revenue to catch up. Unfortunately, our revenue is only going up, well, it went up 0.8% for the spring collections, and that's property taxes. But it looks like if you're going up maybe 1%, even if you go up 1.5%, it's going to take longer than 3 or 4 years to catch up to a balanced budget.
You cannot be spending $1,400 every single hour of the day, 7 days a week, 65 days out of the year, and this is what this is showing, and live to tell about it. That just won't happen. I'm serious. You cannot spend that kind of money. That's per hour, $1,400 an hour, more than you're taking in. This is crazy. I don't know what to say about it. It's not. We're not being fair to taxpayers here. I don't know.
Do you have any amendments that you wish to
Yes,
offer?
I like to offer up. I would like. Well, I would like to make an amendment to cut the temporaries by 15%, and I would like to also make an amendment to. I like to go across the board at a 15% reduction in overtime across the board.
Well, above and beyond what we've already done.
No, minus what we've already taken out. What we've already taken out, whatever that number is.
So are you excluding police, fire, and nuts?
I'm including everybody. I'm talking about across the board.
Another 15%?
No. 15 in total, including the amendments that have already been taken, less those amendments.
Okay, so how much was that a reduction in the police and fire? So how much more in police and fire public safety are we talking about?
There would be any more in public safety. Those are excluded from the amendment, so.
That's not what John just said.
I guess really what gets me going on all this is this.
Me too.
I know public safety is really important. I get that.
Yes,
I
very
really do.
important.
Then why did we give the homestead credit? That's $3.5 million. We should have sold that to the public. We should have told them that was important. You know, I think I got criticized on social media. That was one of the guys that kind of blew it up because my distinguished colleague and I talked about it. Did we not? We did. Yes, we did. And that's $3.5 million. We wouldn't be talking about this
Well,
now.
unfortunately, we've already voted on that. So
I know that.
1.7 ultimately, but.
Well, it would have been a significant amount of money.
It's what it actually cost us, right?
I mean, it could have been, but let me see. Get my deal here. So what we have. What was the total amount of overtime that we have on the board?
Well, the thing is, right now, overtime is $860,000 for police, it's $160,000 for fire, and it's $175,000 for Mets. That's where it stands today, I believe.
Okay,
after the amendments that have already been voted on. So if you want to wanted to make the overtime exclusive of those, then that may be all right. But central dispatch.
I don't mind amending it.
Yeah.
It means it would take into account that whatever has been amended exclusive of that. I'll go for that.
Okay. Now, you understand also that central dispatch has already been cut by $10,000 in
Well, then
the mayor's.
I will yield to that one.
Okay.
And keep in mind, this overtime cut also goes to the utility department, which, by the way, has $1.2 million of overtime in it. That would also go to there, just nothing more than save the money across the board.
So your motion then is a 15% reduction in overtime in all funds except Mets, central dispatch, police, and fire, which have already been voted on.
Yeah, I'll go for that.
Okay. Further discussion?
And, yeah, there was also the elimination of the EPA.
The department?
I'm sorry?
You're eliminating the department?
Yeah, the department.
The whole department?
Yeah, whole department.
Really?
Before we do a motion, is there anybody here that could talk on the EPA? Because I really...
I'll ask for discussion
for
in a second. Yes.
Yeah.
They're going to
There's got to be a motion and a
discussion.
second, and then we'll have discussion.
Yeah.
How much is that number?
EPA is 252 and change.
And does this motion, let me just recap what I think I understand is happening. Temporary salaries, 15%, overtime salaries, 15%, except for EPD, EFD, Central Dispatch, and Mets, and then the EPA, $252,000.
Yeah, it would zero that account out. It is, the number's actually 252, 825, and 69 cents. It's account 101-2201.
And I know what drives that, because the EPA, local EPA, does not issue permits. They answer complaints, and there has been some discussion.
Just a second. You'll have an opportunity to speak.
There's been some discussion about maybe merging some departments, and I think that conversation has happened, and Connor
Yeah.
may know a little bit more.
Yeah, there has been a discussion of this, and the mayor's aware of it. It was one of the discussions that came up in some of the budget talks. In fairness to the parties, and I will say this, that the discussion came up originally by individuals, several individuals outside of this body who approached both John and I by phone and mentioned the idea of doing this, and it somewhat intrigued me, but I think to potentially cut this at this late hour of the year might be difficult, but it is something that clearly should be on, well, this council's radar now because there's been a motion, but also in future councils, because there is some question of whether or not it's a redundant office and whether or not it can be easily absorbed within other departments that serve our city. You know, we certainly ask more and more of people. We do it in the private sector, and certainly you see it, and we need to do it more in the public sector as well. And this would be just another example of appropriate consolidation. But I'm not sure that we can force that issue in 2 months or less.
Well,
that's the concern that I have, not the merits of it.
Well, the mayor had the same concern.
Well, let me say this. I think that's why the electorate is so frustrated with us office holders. We seem to always say, well, mañana. That's what we say.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, mañana.
What's that mean?
That means tomorrow, not today.
I don't know Spanish very well, I'm sorry.
Mañana. Mañana. Yeah, that's what we say, always tomorrow. And, you know, and tomorrow comes and we stack on top of all these problems. Let's look at the sewer problems we've had. Well, we didn't get all this. It's been here for 30 years, 40 years. I just happened to be on the dance floor when the music started. Okay? So I like to take it on now. It's my opinion.
Just a quick point on temporary salaries. Well, and really it would go to overtime as well. One of the reasons you use overtime or use temporary salaries is so you don't have to hire a full-time employee. For the temporary salaries, parks, the expense is roughly, because we looked at this one, $1,269,000. Of course, that's lifeguards all summer long, maintenance in the summer, the rangers at golf courses, et cetera, et cetera. So these are part-timers. A lot of it's summer help, Swander Ice Arena. But we obviously can't afford to make a number of full-time positions out of those. So, I mean, the city actually comes out ahead using the part-time. And then on the Mets, their part-time is $542,000. But you also have part-time drivers, which includes the mobility drivers that are not full-time. And, I mean, a concern I would have is to cut that by a large number. You might end up with buses that don't have drivers.
And the temporaries, they do not receive
No benefits, right, no health insurance.
I might make a comment on the
Yes.
temporary, too. There'll be a proportionate reduction in income from various departments with a reduction in temporary help. These are the ticket takers and the tram drivers and this is just the zoo alone. Ticket takers, tram drivers, the camp counselors, the gift shop employees. So you're going to have if you reduce hours that those are available, you'll reduce income in each one of those line items by 15%. It's also the groundskeepers at the golf courses. These are the kids who are hired to mow the lawns and mow the greens and take care of those. I'm not a golfer, but I can't imagine people would play golf if in fact the fairways are full and the greens are long. Same with the swimming pools. 15% of lifeguards will reduce hours by 15% at the pools, which may necessitate the closing of 1 or 2 pools, just so you're aware.
Well, and then the police indicated crossing guards, those are all part-time.
I know, but what we're doing here is this. My attempt here is to try to ultimately save positions that are their careers, our police officers, firefighters, the ones that have, families. And I understand people have those temporary jobs. It's important to them as well. But if we don't start looking at every nickel and looking at it close when we can cut, that's going to happen. Now, Russ, you know what happened back in 1980? You were here when you saw that.
I wasn't here.
You were not here?
I mean, I was in Evansville, but I wasn't in the city.
Well, I mean, they were in such a shape that they had to cut 360 people.
Right, they lost federal funding.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was a disaster. Okay.
Any other comments from members of council? Actually, did you make the motion?
Yes.
I'd like to hear about the EPA first.
Okay, I think just real quick to clarify the mayor's comments, he said that something, he didn't think it could be accomplished in 2 months, that it's got to be a lot longer-term plan.
What does that entail?
Well,
that it couldn't be accomplished in 2 months?
Well, maybe we can have some EPA
Maybe Jacob
experts talk about it. But IDEM would have to take over the city's function, and I don't think that would be a very smooth process, but maybe one of those.
Jacob, you want to come forward?
Jacob Keating, current director of the Environmental Protection Agency here in Evansville.
I'm not sure we asked you to justify your position, but maybe that's your interview at this point.
I mean,
Can I just say something? That's like a personal attack. We appreciate the job you're doing.
It's not a personal attack. There's a motion to eliminate your position.
Right.
Tell me how you're valuable and why it shouldn't be. Tell us why you're valuable and why it shouldn't be done at this time.
Well, for one, in the city code, currently there's quite a lot of language that requires us to permit facilities that have any kind of air emissions within the city. We also deal with recreational fires and open burning and issues along those lines, which aren't dealt with generally anywhere else. We also deal with any kind of complaints, whether it is environmental, whether it's dust or smells or anything you can imagine. We get the phone calls and we go out and check it out. And, there's myself and 2 other inspectors. And this is what we do all day long, whether it's inspecting a facility that we permit, which gets done once a year, to make sure they're in compliance with their permit, or whether it's just answering the calls from the community. That's what we're out doing every day.
And can I ask you this? I mean, we can get in the weeds of it. Open burning, those are permits, that's an outdoor campfire and those sort of things, correct?
Correct.
You have to get a permit for it. Clearly, this is not something that could not otherwise be handled by some other department.
I mean,
currently it's not, but it could be. I mean,
I'd like to ask who that might be.
Well, I mean, that's part of the transition, right? If need be. As far as the permitting of, and checking out other things, is that something that is done by your department because IDEM, well, let's ask this way, IDEM can do it.
IDEM does permit certain facilities. There's a threshold limit for whom they permit.
Okay.
We, on the other hand, permit anyone and everyone, and I mean we have very reasonable fees, and I think we do a wonderful job of going out to these different facilities. The majority of the places we find that are breaking the rules are the mom and pop shops, the auto body shops, the places that are right next to neighborhoods that IDEM would never inspect or be around or help because they have, I think, 3 air inspectors for all of southern Indiana.
Okay. So you're getting down into more into the weeds, more into the grassroots area.
Yes.
Okay. Connie, do you have a question?
How many permits have you issued?
I don't know how many new ones. I'd probably say a dozen. We have about 212 permitted sources here within the city, 215, somewhere along that line.
Could you operate with a smaller staff?
I already do. I cut a position last year.
Could you cut a position next year and still operate?
I would rather cut my position and have my staff remain on.
If I might,
Yes.
Go ahead, Don.
My name is Donna Bergman. I'm currently the grants manager, but from 2001 to 2010, I was the Evansville EPA's director. The Evansville EPA began in the 1940s because enlightened individuals with names like A.B. Brown and Mr. Butterfield saw a real need to have air pollution control. It started as the Citizens Committee for Smoke Abatement. Since that time, we've gone through a variety of different pollutants, starting with total suspended particulate, which means big chunks of dust, down to particulate matter 2.5 microns in diameter, ultrafine stuff. In that same time period, we have gone from non-attainment to ozone and particulate matter national air quality standards to attainment. This year, we had no exceedances of the 75 part per billion ozone standard, no exceedances.
We had one.
One.
But that was the first in 3 years.
Yeah, all right, you're right. And absolutely none on the PM 2.5. The Evansville EPA permits around 220 facilities. They do annual inspections of those facilities once a year, unannounced. They respond 24/7 to complaints and emergencies. They regulate open burning, not just the recreational fires, but they actually inspect open burn variances within their jurisdiction, but outside in the county. We respond to emergency fires. As far as the budget goes, it's a $252,000 budget offset by around $50,000 worth of air permit fees, and of that $200,000 remaining, they pay rent to the Parks Department. So it's probably around $190,000. In contrast, IDEM has 3 air inspectors for 17 southwestern Indiana counties. They inspect the largest sources once every 2 years. They respect the next largest group of sources maybe once every 5 years. The other ones don't get inspected at all generally. So in addition, the municipal code, which was passed by this body, provides regulations and rules that are much more protective than IDEM's rules and laws. So you would lose the ability to further protect public health. And as Ms. Mosby said, you know, public safety is a paramount concern, and really the Evansville EPA is not only public health but public safety. IDEM only calls ozone alerts and particulate alerts for the counties who have a monitor. Vanderburgh County is one of them. They just send it out on their website and put out a public notice. Evansville EPA sends it out on Facebook, on email, to the media, to schools, to first responders, to senior citizens' homes. They will even call small daycare centers to make sure they know tomorrow's an ozone alert day. Keep your kids inside in the afternoon. That is what you would be losing if you defunded the EPA. IDEM's inspectors have 30 days to respond to a complaint. Evansville EPA responds the same or next business day. Beyond that, they can provide abundant technical assistance to the regulated community. We can answer a question. We can point them in the right direction. We can run interference with them for them to IDEM. You would be losing all of that. We have been a friend and a partner with the business community over
Run interference?
our time.
Can you explain what you mean by run interference with IDEM?
Well, for instance, if you've got a technical question and about how the state interprets a rule, and you don't really want to be, you really don't want your name out there, they will call and make the question and be able to ask the informed and educated questions necessary to get an answer from IDEM, and then can document that. So that actually helps protect the business that's involved. Ms. Robinson, I remember one time I went out to your place of business and looked at asbestos. You wouldn't get that if you didn't have somebody like the Evansville EPA. Yes?
I've used your services a lot. I'll call with different questions and with neighborhood associations and constituents. And, I mean, you've always been right there when I call you, and I get your alerts, and I do check on certain individuals in my neighborhood when I know things are going on.
I would just suggest that perhaps you were uninformed or misinformed about the contributions that the Evansville EPA makes to this community and beyond.
I have a comment.
Yes.
Environmental science major, 1996, University of Evansville. I'm not voting to get rid of the EPA, but I do have a question. Why did the Evansville EPA write a letter opposing? I mean, you seem so passionate about air quality, yet your office wrote a letter opposing the more stringent air quality standards that have been proposed by the United
You mean the
States
70 part
EPA.
per billion that was just adopted by the U.S. EPA?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
I wrote that in tandem with Joanne Alexandrovich, Dr. Joanne Alexandrovich with the Evansville Health, or with the Vanderbilt County Health Department. She's their ozone officer. We read through that entire very, very long rule that was in place for comment. We decided that the science that was out there and included in that rulemaking supported a 70 part per billion, a reduction of 5 parts per billion from the current standard. We did a lot of discussion, wrote back and forth, reached out to other colleagues, talked to people, and that's what we landed on with the science that was provided. That was the surefire, this is what it says, and we also agreed with the current EPA administrator, who also suggested 70 parts per billion.
And our current ozone levels,
Our current ozone levels would meet that standard, but that had absolutely no regard as to how I would have. If I thought it would be 65 would have been the appropriate answer, I would have done that, even if that would have put us in noncompliance.
Anyone else wish to comment on John's amendments or proposed amendments? Yes, John.
Hey, John, I think I heard you say you've been around 8 years. Why the drastic cuts all of a sudden?
Well, what brought I talked to some environmentalists. I didn't come up with this myself. The well-known environmentalists out there basically said that IDEM, they're the one they do all the permitting. They said we're just doubling up the expenses on this particular deal. Up until now, Jonathan, I had no idea about that. I didn't come up on this, dreamed up one day to get rid of the EPA. I want to get rid of things in government that duplicates things. That's the problem we got with the local, state, and federal deal. Once you put these departments on, you can never get rid of them. They keep going on and on. They perpetuate themselves.
Well, you've been doing the last 6 to 8 years.
I get it.
I mean,
I came
you
up
never
on
proposed
it.
this
And when
until like 2
somebody,
years ago.
no, Jonathan, when
Some
somebody,
of these cuts where you started.
when somebody brought that to my attention, who is a strong advocate for the environment, I was surprised, quite frankly. And when I'm looking at money to cut, that's how I came up with it. I didn't dream it up. I don't have anything against
These are a lot of
folks,
amendments I never heard you bring up in the past. That's all I'm saying.
but that's the only one I ever brought up.
I would say this as well. I mean, and John was probably the same phone call I was, and we try to be responsive to our constituents. And so when a constituent makes a call and says, hey, this may be an area where you can consolidate because the state's taking more and more control over it, then I think it's our duty to look into it and say, hey, are we going to have some efficiencies here? Now, I don't know the merits of it or not. I'm not saying that it doesn't have merits. I think the only issue here is whether or not we can do it in 2 months. I mean, Jacob and Don aside, I'm pretty sure that we have plenty of staff to issue open burn permits. The question is whether or not we have enough staff or consolidation to look into the air quality and the 220 or so other permitted or businesses that IDEM does not look into, and whether or not that's a quality of life issue for the citizens of Evansville. That to me is the question we have to look at. I mean, I'm sure that 4 years ago, when we had the building, or whatever it was, the building commission and neighborhood inspection services, nobody dreamed of consolidating those. But they found, you know what, there's some efficiencies there. Why don't we do that? And I think we have a better department now than we did before. So it's just being responsive, Marco.
Yeah, and I'm Marco DeLucio from the City Attorney's Office. Just a couple of points with respect to IDEM taking over and running the show down here. I do a lot of work back and forth with IDEM. They're an overworked agency in Indianapolis as well. We're down here in the hinterlands. I don't think you get near the response from IDEM when you've got an issue that you would have and the types of things that the local EPA does. And sure, there may be other folks that could issue burn permits or do some of the other things, but one of the things I've just heard is we're going to, cut overtime and cut not necessarily staff, although it may mean staff. We're going to be cutting across the board, or the proposal is to cut across the board 15% of the overtime for some of these folks. And at some point in time, you're not going to have people around to provide the services that we're used to having. I mean, I saw this evening some of the cuts. I mean, we're cutting fire, we're cutting police department, we're cutting transportation, we're cutting road funds. All of those things are going to disappear. We're not going to be able to provide the kinds of services that we have in the past. And that may be all true, but what we presented, or what the mayor's office presented to you, was a flatline budget. We cut it down from $3 million from what was initially there down. We cut it down $3 million, some additional cuts this evening, all in an attempt to try to get it flatlined to what it was last year, in an attempt to wait and see. I'm not a believer that the sky is falling. I hear what you're saying, John. I just don't think that it is. And I think that the administration and the city council that will be here next year have the ability to manage the funds so that we don't overspend what we've been doing, or that, like, we don't overspend at all. I mean, I think the administration in the past has managed the cash in such a way that there is sufficient cash in order to pay the bills as they come due. So with that being said, I would hope that you would not pass these additional amendments to eliminate the EPA, to cut 15% of overtime across the board for all the other city agencies that are going to need to continue to provide services in the
Marco,
future.
can I say something? It's been said from the administration, this is a revenue problem, not a expenditure problem. I've heard that once. I've heard it 10 times. When I hear things like that, it tells me that the only way you get revenues up is get sales up, isn't it? And no, wait a minute. Let me finish. Okay. Sales means increases in taxes. That's what I hear that to be, increases in fees on people down and off of Mets that they can't hardly afford an auto ride. And when I see people that have to, when they see the taxes go up, God only knows that we're taxed to death now. So it's incumbent on every fiscal body to look at every area that you can cut. I don't care if it's $10. That's the problem we got in the society. Oh, well, it's only 10 here, 20 there. And who was it? Dirksen said that once. $1 million here and $1 million there. Before long, you got some serious bucks. That came from Dirksen himself. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. At least I am.
Well, I think what we're trying to accomplish is, you're right, it is a revenue problem. But to the extent you go in and start to cut services, you cut roads, you cut transportation, you cut fire and safety, I think that that's going to have an impact on growth. And there's a lot of good things going on in the city right now, from the hotel to the med center to the downtown development to Haney's Corner. There's a lot of things going on that are very good, that are all going to lead eventually, if the city continues to grow and prosper, an increased tax base. And that doesn't mean increased taxes, that just means an increased tax base to allow, to fund some of these things and to go forward so we can. If you start to make these cuts where the roads aren't fixed, where the fire and police department aren't properly staffed so that they can respond to emergencies, that's when you're going to have a quality of life issue and cause some problems in the community.
Yeah. And you're right. You just got to get there first, right? So,
Jake, and I'm not at all foreshadowing that I'm voting for those things, but I mean, you have added 40-plus new temporary employees that are not seasonal. We have, the budget proposed even up until the mayor's cuts tonight was not flat because of the expenditures that were pushed into local income tax funds. What we've done and already voted on actually flattens it. because of, our local income tax has been absorbing more and more of operational expenses, and so when you push operational expenses over to that category, it's not a flat budget. I think it's flat now, but, John has said before, and it was mentioned tonight, we've got, as of last month, there was $17 million in unpaid bills. Our controller has taken the podium and said that they pay the bills even in October, November, and December, and without taking specific issue with Russ Lloyd, who I have a lot of respect for. That's not true. Sherry Shapker, our contract employee, wasn't paid from November through January last year because non-essential vendors don't get paid. I have a friend that sells trailers to the city. He sold trailers, his mistake, in October of 2014, and he wasn't paid until February of this year. I have outstanding medical claims because I had to pay out of pocket for my son's surgery, some $4,000, and personnel tells me that I'll get my reimbursement when the reimbursements are funded. And they are not being funded because we are into crunch time where we cannot have any more expenditures that are non-essential come out of our books. Dan McGinn was a department head. He can't deny that this is the way that we run the city in the last couple months of the year. If it's a non-essential vendor, those bills get pushed off. That's just the reality. It's not new to Lloyd Winnicke, so let's not pretend like it doesn't happen. It happened under Weinzapfel. The issue, and the administrations before, I'm sure it happened under yours, but it's the issue that it's gotten worse and worse, and we're pushing more and more bills into that. Look, I agree with you. I don't, we have to do things to create growth. Also believe that the sky is not falling, but we are spending more than we take in, as evidenced last year when we had to take an advance of revenue from 2015 to balance the books for 2014. And it's just a few million a year, but it has to be looked at. And that doesn't mean that we should do these additional cuts, but I take issue with the idea that everybody's getting paid and everything's fine and you're managing. This has been a debate that's been going on for over 2 years, long before there was a mayoral candidate that was challenging Lloyd Winnicke. It's not a new debate. It started in 2013. The issues with the books started in 12 because all of us got sidelined with the State Board of Accounts. And so this is a long-term debate, and I wish we could be a little more honest about it. And so I take issue with some of that, but it doesn't mean that I'm saying it's not necessarily anybody's fault, but it has to be addressed.
That $17 million, I don't know where that number came from. That's a fictitious number.
That number came from your blue book.
Not $17 million.
Yes, it did. Get it out here. You bring it up here. I'll bet you a steak dinner on it tonight. And get.
Now, you lost a steak dinner earlier.
No. Hey, I lost a steak dinner because you didn't transfer $4 million out of the. No, wait. Let me finish.
Okay.
I got proof on this. You did not transfer $4 million out of the general fund into a hospitalization fund in June. Now, get me out. In May and June of this year, previous year, you transferred the $4 million. Had you not done that, that general fund would have been upside down by $3.1 million in the end of June.
One thing, you want to add the liabilities. We operate on a cash basis. You want to add the liabilities. You don't want to add the accounts receivable. I mean, you'd have to actually balance those two out. Accounts receivable, millions.
Russ, it's a trend. It's a trend, Russ. I'm not looking at $17 million, but the previous year you were 11. Don't you believe in trends? When you see a trend going, as an accountant, you would say, wow, we got a trend heading the wrong direction.
There's no $17 million.
It's in your encumbrances in the blue book.
On the health insurance, the city bills that quarterly and pays it, $4.8 million approximately. The city is going to bill $4.8 million in October and pay it. But the cash that goes in the hospitalization fund pays the claims as the money comes in. Sometimes that fund may go negative. The city would pay claims, to get the claims to the medical providers.
Russ, I ask you the question. Now, let me ask you a question about that hospitalization. The way you determined it, you took the number of employees you had covered, and you divided in the total amount, the budgetary amount of hospitalization, correct? That's the way you do it.
Total cost.
And then you divide it by 26, which is the number of pay periods you have. So every single month you would have a transfer going from the general fund down into the hospitalization. And I can prove, bring accountants in here, I can prove that is sporadic. It's sporadic. For instance, at the end of June of 2000 of this year, your hospitalization was upside down by $1.5 million. The previous 12 months earlier, it was positive by $1.9 million. That's what you need, 1 month of supplies to pay the bills.
And
that's a proper amount of money.
Right.
But I'm telling you, that was a swing of $3.3 million, and it should have been reflected in the general fund, and it was not.
And that fund fluctuates based on claims as they come in.
Okay.
Sometimes they're more, sometimes they're less.
Let's bring it back to the budget. We can argue about how much money's in the accounts and stuff like that, and what's gone on previous. But let's go ahead and get to the amendment. The proposed amendments, as I understand it, are to eliminate the EPA, as well as to cut overtime and temporary pay, exclusive of fire, police, central dispatch, and METs. Would you like to do that combined, or?
No, we can break it.
Okay.
Can I ask John a question?
Yes.
Would you consider a compromise to fund the EPA for 6 months
I'd go for that.
and see how long the transition would take, and if there's other departments that could take over those responsibilities?
I think it's a good idea.
Can I ask just a preliminary question, or maybe, Russ, this may be a better thing. When we're dealing with the budget, though, do we have to fund it at, well, we'd have to fund $126,000, but if, or where would it come from? Where would the other 126 to fund to create the balance of the 6 months come from?
You do it just like you did the IT. You'd move it over and release it if necessary.
So
if not,
you would go ahead
reabsorbed.
and allot, you would go ahead and put 252 and then put 126 in cash?
Yeah,
I mean, that's,
you
or,
would move it over.
Russ, is that
and then
how?
you could pull it back if it didn't work out.
Or,
Okay. One thing about EPA, we've also got some revenues.
yeah, I understand.
It's at 52,000.
Well, but I mean, that's the net amount, that's the gross amount is 252 and change. The net amount's going to be less, but
Well, it's 252, 825 is the expense, and then you
Right.
have about 50 in revenue.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, but that's the
Right.
expense. That's just what we're talking about right now.
I'm not sure how you would fund half of it when you have those full-time positions. You've already approved the salary ordinance for those to be paid at that amount. So if you only fund half of it, would it just run out at 6 months?
Well, I mean, I think the issue is whether or not you could separate half of those funds and put it into another line item. I think we did that a couple of years back with the IT department, but I think that was an LIT, which is a little different. I think we kept that in cash and LIT and then dispersed it on a quarterly basis. I don't know if we can do that within the general fund or not.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
So if this is cut out of the budget, could the new council next year put it back in?
I don't believe so. Well, I mean, they'd have to allocate it out of
reallocate.
cash.
Well, you'd have to,
It has to be allocated out of cash.
within the total budget, if they could find
Just need to know these
250,000.
Right.
Because I'll be here next year.
But maybe not in 4.
I mean, whatever council funds on it.
Okay,
the
guys.
I mean, the city will have to work with it, whatever amount you fund on that.
Okay. I guess, is there a motion then?
I thought you were going to split it up, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not fine doing
How do you want to do this, John?
You can split it up if you want to.
Okay, so you have a motion to
Eliminate.
fund the EPA for 6 months or to eliminate the EPA? What's your motion?
Well, I go with what Connie suggested, run it for 6 months, give them time
To get in compliance,
Yes,
or
get
to
in
see whether or not it can be done?
The revenue was 57,000.
My concern would be this. I mean, you heard the plea and you heard what the local EPA does. And my fear is you fund them for 6 months and you decide that they're doing well, what happens? And you've got to fund them another way. We haven't had any conversations that I know of with IDEM about their ability and wherewithal to come down and provide the services that the local EPA provides. I kind of doubt that they can provide the same level of service. So it would seem to me, at the very least, that we should keep the EPA around for another year. Then can work on that in the next year to find out if there's a reasonable alternative to what the local EPA provides as far as a service for our community.
Russ, can I make a comment? Is it true that you can go back in front of the Department of Local Government Finance and request an additional appropriations at that point in time, because we would have had the savings, supposedly, that we should be able to dovetail back in if that would be the case? I mean, you make requests up there to that department all the time.
I mean, there'll be a general fund budget limit that
Sure.
you can't exceed, but if you are under that, then you could
Well, then you get the savings.
money
Then
from cash balance.
it gives you encouragement to have savings.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The motion then is to fund EPA at $127,000, well, $126,500, it's an easier number, $126,500, which is one half of that. Or actually, I guess the question is it's really actually a $126,000 cut, call it that way, is to cut the EPA's budget by $126,000. That's really the motion. Is there, so there's, John's offered that. Is there a second? Let's go ahead and do a individual vote.
Okay, and this is only for?
Only the EPA.
Only the EPA. Councilman O'Daniel?
No.
Councilman Adams?
I don't think I can go along with tinkering with public health. I vote no.
Councilwoman Brinkoff Riley?
No.
Councilman Friend?
Yay.
Councilman Lindsay?
No.
Councilman McGinn?
No.
Councilwoman Mosby?
No.
Councilwoman Robinson?
No.
Councilman Weaver?
No.
Okay, that motion fails. Second motion then is to cut overtime by 15, overtime and temporary salaries in each department by 15% exclusive of fire, police, central dispatch and METs. I think we can probably do this by just overall vote. Just all in favor?
Aye.
All in favor? No, I'm sorry. Ayes would be to make the cut.
Hold on a second.
Do we? I'm sorry. Yeah, there was a motion. I'm sorry. All right. An aye vote will be to make the cut. A nay vote is to obviously put that down. So. I'm sorry. Yeah. Anybody from? Yes.
I really have a huge concern on this as well. What is this going to do to our temporary help? What's it going to do to our pools? What's it, like Councilman McGinn said, the parks, the city golf courses, the things that people rely on that, maybe can't take a vacation out of town and they stay here in town and do those things. What are we doing to our constituents, the way of life and the livelihood of the people that live here in Evansville? And the workers. Can you answer that, Councilman O'Daniel?
Well, I think it's Councilman Friend's motion. I think the issue that I would have is that I think it's well intended to try to rein in costs. I don't know how far-reaching this would be and what impact it would have since the motion's being made. In the off-season, it probably could be worked out, but of most of the seasonal work that's done in the off-season. But it could probably be worked out in time, but because we haven't heard from Parks Director, the Zoo Director, the golf courses, we don't really know what the effect would be at this point. So that's what concerns me.
I know, and they weren't aware that these cuts were being made. I'm just, I love Evansville. I love our city, and I think some of these things that we're doing tonight is really going to hurt Evansville. It just makes me sick to my stomach.
Councilman Friend.
I understand that, Missy, but I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one on this council that can see negative numbers. I don't understand it. Then the people of this town better get ready to have a tax increase. That's the only thing I can see we can do if we're going to keep these services up. Councilman McGann here sat right beside me. He said that he would support an increase in our income taxes. Now, what kind of economic effect does that have on the subchapter S corporations that reside here in Evansville? That's a tax that hits them. It's bad enough with this health insurance that these small businesses are fighting through. But that's what I see, because the S corporations, it all comes right down into the businesses themselves. That's going to have to be one of the next issues that you're going to have to bring up next year.
Well, can we leave this alone? Can we leave this alone? And we'll deal with it next year and see if we actually need to deal with this next year.
If I may add, that would be my suggestion. That would be my suggestion.
Please.
Four of the people here who are voting on this are not going to be here to deal with these budgetary crises and layoffs and problems next year. Several of us probably will be. A couple definitely will be. And the issue is, I'll bring this up again. The reason that the tax caps were put in was to take the huge burden off property owners. It was to spread it around other people. Now, you talk about this 0.25% of the increase in local income tax. I mean, with our $36,000 median income in this town, you're talking $1.75 a week. Half a pack of cigarettes, 2 beers, or a beer. And that will keep these cuts from being made to our police and our fire department. I'm willing to discuss that next year, but I don't want to do it under the gun. To come in here and have a complete reduction in services, including, $215,000 or $168,000 already knocked overtime of our police and fire. I mean, that's going to be a substantial hit. Public safety is going to suffer.
But you're not
I'd rather
suggesting
leave this
that,
alone and talk about everything as a full package next year.
But the thing is that's yet another way, and you and I can differ on this, but it's another way of kicking the can down the road. We were elected to serve 4 years, and I intend to serve every day of those 4 years. And as finance chair, I've taken this on. I certainly did not have to stay in this position and work as many hours as I have in looking through this budget to find cost savings and efficiencies where I think that it will not affect services to this city. I think I've done that. I think I've done it in a way that helps promote the future of our city. And, whether I'm sitting up here or in the audience or sitting at home watching this next year or in the future, the bottom line is I, too, am a taxpayer, and I care about this city. It's why I came back here after school. It's why I continue to raise my family and work here. So, this is done out of concern for the city, not out of any selfish or egotistical manner. This is trying to better our city for the future. That's why I don't want to saddle us with more debt. That's why, we want to buy police cars with funds that are earmarked for capital funds instead of potentially waste it and give it to nonprofits. Now, that's editorial, but, I think that we've been, even the 4 of us who will not be here next year, have done this in a manner that is trying to promote our city, not out of any spite or anything of that nature.
But Councilman
you're talking
O'Daniel,
about reducing services already by a 15% across-the-board cut in temporary salaries and overtime for all departments.
Well,
I will tell you that will affect services.
Okay, and that's the motion on the floor. Okay, so that's.
Councilman O'Daniel and
Yes.
Councilman Friend, I do appreciate the job that you've been doing. I know you've spent a lot of hours on this, but you're asking this council to vote on something that you yourself said, I don't know how this will impact the temporary positions. I don't know what this will do. So,
That's the motion on
not
the floor.
fair.
Yeah, that's the motion on the floor.
I have a point of clarification,
Yes.
please.
I don't think he made the motion.
He isn't, not yet. I didn't make the motion.
I'm sorry.
I have a, Russ, can you tell us how much is in temporary salaries?
I think John gave us that number, but
It's on this handout. If you flip back to the
Is it around 3 million?
2.3 million, 2.36 million, I think.
2.363 million.
Okay, and so and then when we talk about overtime minus these 4 departments, do you have a ballpark figure of what number you're asking to cut?
I knew what it would be if I used the
One, two,
formula. Almost $500,000, but we now taken some of this off.
It's not that much. Let me think about this for a second.
I know originally, just in Mets Police, Central Dispatch, and Fire, you're talking about $2 million roughly.
Yes, and Central
that's
Dispatch,
been
I think
cut.
about 2.2
Yeah.
total. So it would be another 150,000 because it's 3.1 million in temporary salary or overtime. So I mean, it's overtime is about 3, temporary is about 2.3. So the overtime would be another 150 or so out of each total departments, and temps would be 150, and then.
One other point on overtime, you also have the highway garage, which if you have a bad winter, the overtime needs to be funded.
Right. Okay. Members of the audience, I know I saw a couple people stand up. Do you make any comment? Leather jacket first. He was up first, I'm sure. Okay, go ahead. Come forth.
This is about the budget.
Yes. Please state your name, address.
My name is Randy. My family name is McDowell, and I'm at 2211 South Kentucky Avenue. I know there's a decompartmentalization between state, federal, and city. I can't agree with you more, Mr. Friend, on a lot of the things that you talk about. And that's part of the problem, is that we are stuck as constituents coming to you as a local level whenever this touches on so many other levels. If you want to cut programs, if you're talking about programs, I don't know if it's a city thing, a state thing, or whatever, but the Road to Reentry program is one that can be cut. That's over $200,000 of our tax dollars going to house violent sexual offenders. The key word here is violent, which have no mandatory minimums like someone who uses a plant does. So these people are not only let out with a slap on the wrist, but they're catered to with food stamps, they're catered to with housing, they're catered to with job, education.
Okay, we don't fund that. Okay, that's not a city issue.
At some point, this affects the city because they're being housed here, they're being brought here from other cities and other counties. So at what point does it affect us? You know, some of this is ridiculous. It looks more like a dog and pony show. It is. It is. That's where the decompartmentalization comes from. A dog and pony show. So who is advocating at a state or at a local level here to the state for their negligence? And then who's going to go from there to the federal part of it for their negligence? Because from what I understand, it is the people in this room that protect the citizens of Evansville, Indiana. Whenever the state fails to do it and the federal state fails to do it, and they have both done that. It seems funny that they can find money for bombs and to fund ISIS, and we're sitting here discussing this over expenditure. That's what this is. Let's just spend, spend, spend. This is nothing but a dog and pony show, and it's ridiculous. I came back from Hawaii, living there 10 years, to this, and everybody asked me, why did you come back? Why would you come back to here? I really don't know. I thought Evansville would have prospered instead of going backwards. But that's what we have. That's where we are today. And I hope you're reelected.
Thank you.
I don't understand what the EPA has done for us. You know, we had a spill up the river that no one was charged with. That wasn't no mom and pop's crap. Why wasn't no one charged with that? Poisoning our water. I know I've called several times to the EPA with problems, especially what's being sprayed over my head, which I don't appreciate, which is another state or federal problem that we have to deal with at a local level. because somebody neglects to do their job or pushes it off on the next person. It's called chemtrails, and I know the difference between contrails and chemtrails. Contrails dissipate shortly after. That's water vapor. Chemtrails stay up there and make funny little crisscross patterns, and X marks the spots. But we don't have anyone advocating for us at a local level, really doing their job, calling us constituents, and asking the tough questions at a state level or a federal level or going up the chain of command for us. That's how this works. That's why the sheriff is the last man standing whenever the federal government breaks the law, and he's the last one standing. That's how this works. You guys are there for us, and I mean, this is incompetence or something.
Any other concerns about the overtime and the temp and the EPA?
I just, really, all of this would stop if people would, if the leaders, the real leaders, would actually look at some of what the other states are doing. Colorado, Utah, Oregon. They made $11 million in one day. I think that would almost pay all this off, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it?
Maybe.
Oh, but that's too taboo. It's because it's a plant. Does a salad offend people too? Come on, I lived in Hawaii. I saw the benefits of it.
Okay.
Whether it's medical or economical.
Quiet down, please. Let's wrap it up a little. Okay.
Whether it's economical or whatever. The whole aspect of them using children as an excuse to keep it from us is ridiculous, because if it was about the children, then the road to reentry program would not exist.
Okay.
And then people would have mandatory minimums.
Okay. Sir, you're talking about things outside of what we're discussing here, and that's fine.
They all
To a
connect.
point.
They
To a
all
point.
connect. They all come together. And at what point are you guys going to start going to a state level and saying something about this? Because our taxes can fund wars. They can fund Israel. They can fund other countries like Afghanistan to try and help them. But our people are sitting here discussing this, and it's ridiculous.
Okay.
That's what's redundant.
Okay. Thank you very much. I hear you. But I need to yield to other people who may be
That's
wanting
fine.
to comment.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
Steve Airy of 1249 John Street. As long as we are presenting everything that can be cut for the overall budget, the city could save yet another $180,000 per year by cutting health insurance benefits to the part-time city council members. Is there any reason why this cannot be or should not be done?
Okay. Well, it's not really a motion on the floor, but that may be something somebody discusses here in a few minutes. As it relates to, I think there has been a motion made. I don't know if it's been seconded or not.
I think Councilman Lindsay seconded it.
Okay.
Roll call.
Do you want a roll call vote?
Yeah.
All right.
So for clarification, this is to cut temporary salaries 15%?
Yes.
And then 15% reduction in overtime minus central dispatch, police, fire, and Mets just for the overtime, correct?
Correct. A nay vote is not to accept that.
Okay. Councilman O'Daniel?
Nay.
Councilman Adams?
Nay.
Councilwoman Brincroft Riley?
Nay.
Councilman Friend?
Aye.
Councilman Lindsay?
Nay.
Councilman McGinn?
Nay.
Councilwoman Mosby?
No.
Councilwoman Robinson?
Nay.
Councilman Weaver?
No.
That motion too fails. Are there any other motions that any council folks want to make? Mr. Airy just suggested something about health insurance, but I've not seen a motion to that effect or second, so, and I'm not willing to make that motion at this time. Any other motions by members of council? Okay. Let's bring this to a vote then. F 2015-20 as amended. We've accepted the amendments. Is there a motion then to accept that as amended? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
All right, let's roll call.
Councilman O'Daniel,
Aye.
Councilman Adams,
Nay.
Councilwoman Brickgraf Riley,
Aye.
Councilman Friend,
Nay.
Councilman Lindsay,
Aye.
Councilman McGinn,
No.
Councilwoman Mosby,
No.
Councilwoman Robinson,
Aye.
Councilman Weaver.
No.
Okay, we don't have a budget. It fails.
Well, I guess we could make an amendment going back without these changes and see whether that would pass.
No, we've already accepted the amendments. The amendments have already been accepted. We
Well,
voted on the budget as amended. It has failed. And so in order to bring this back before the council, we will have to have a new budget hearing, potentially suspend the rules again, and so.
Wait a minute.
What?
Hold on a second. I mean, we started off with an amended budget, and then you added a whole bunch of amendments, and we've knocked down your amendments. I don't see why we
vote on the
can't
budget.
rejuvenate the original, what we started with.
No, the
And
amendments
vote
were
on that.
accepted. The amendments were accepted, and so that is what came before the council on vote.
We won't be able to have
I know.
another budget,
I know.
10 days.
There's not enough time for a final.
Wait a minute.
We're all confused.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's,
you're pulling a fast
Yeah,
one.
no, I'll tell you what. Let's take a 5-minute recess,
Yeah.
and so we can clarify the legal aspects of it,
Can we vote
and then we may
Can we vote again?
revote this.
I don't think so right now.
frankly, hasn't happened before and probably shouldn't happen again, but nevertheless, we all learn every day from something new. And so the vote was 5-4 against, and so that action will be moved towards it'll be moved towards the regular hearing or regular meeting, which we will commence here in a second. With that, we will close the Finance Committee.
I'm waiting for you, kid.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's not actually in committee. That was held, it would be suspended the rules in 3 readings, and that will be held during the regular meeting.
Yeah. Thanks.
Do we have any other committee? Nothing. All right,
I was waiting for her to change the thing. Okay. The Honorable Council of the City of Evansville is here by call to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman McGinn?
Here.
Councilwoman Mosby? Here. Councilwoman Brinkroff-Riley? Here. Councilwoman Robinson?
Here.
Councilman Friends?
Here.
Councilman Lindsay?
Here.
Councilman O'Daniel?
Here.
Councilman Weaver?
Here.
Councilman Adams?
Here. There being 9 members present, 0 absent, the 9 members representing a quorum, I hereby declare the session of the Common Council officially open. We'll have Officer Kirby lead us in the alert. Thank you, Officer Kirby. Fellow councilmen, those in the audience, welcome to the October 26, 2015 meeting of the Common Council. This is the 20th meeting of this year. Do we have anybody from schools that are still here? I think most of them took off because it was probably an hour past their bedtime. Okay, great. Council's attorney this night is Scott Danks. Sergeant of Arms is Sergeant Officer Kirby. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of October 12th meeting for the Common Council as written? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? So be it.
Reports and communications. In your October 22nd packet, City Council meeting agenda and committee meeting schedule for October 26, 2015. Resolution C, 2015-18, 19, 20, and 21. Ordinances F, 2015-20, 21, and R, 2015-27. Weights and Measures Monthly Report from September through October 2015. Hope of Evansville Incorporated funding proposal. Emailed material, October 12, 2015 meeting minutes. On your desk this evening, extended agenda, Evansville salary ordinance balances 2012 through 2015, and fund balances 2013 through 2015.
Is there a motion to receive, file, and make these reports and communications part of the minutes of the meeting?
Madam Clerk, what about this? Is this?
That would not be part of the record, as that was individual mailing to council members.
Okay. It's file stamped.
I just did that for a date for you, so you would know when we received it.
Okay, thank you.
With it being sent to each council person?
It came in a packet addressed to me, but they were closed, and it said marked confidential, so with it being sealed, I would have never opened it.
Can we ask that it be put in the records? Because I find this quite disturbing.
Can we wait till miscellaneous?
Well, I wanted to be put in the records.
Well, it would be if it were.
But she's reading now, so I thought maybe we should bring it to the attention now, because I like it to show the records, because I find it very disturbing that I have the fire chief dressed as an African American.
Well, I think it'd be fun if we could just discuss it, and it will be in the minutes if you want to discuss it miscellaneous. I don't have any problem with it, discussing it. I just think it's a little more clean to do it that way.
I don't care about Cleveland when he's portraying to be an African-American with a
That's
ball
not,
in Tennessee.
that's not the point at this juncture. I think,
The public should know what our fire chief is doing.
and I don't think I'm trying to prevent you from doing that. I just think it should be best handled under miscellaneous.
Well, I mean, I'd like it to be in the reports of communication. I'm not even asking to discuss it tonight. I just want it to be logged as received materials, and I think that's all she's asking.
Yeah.
It's filed, so.
Yeah, but she's saying it's not in the, she's not considering that reports and
I
communication.
wasn't considering it part of report.
Ah,
I
I
just
see.
stated it
That's
just
all
for
we're
you.
trying
I'm
to,
just saying it should be
I
listed.
apologize.
I don't
It
even
was in-
think it's,
Okay.
Since I
That's a totally other issue, whether we should take anonymous things in the packet, but we did. We all got something in the packet, and therefore,
It should be listed.
this,
under-
you're absolutely correct. It should be in the packet.
yeah, that's what we're asking to list it. I mean, I should,
I mean, it came in the
Councilwoman
packet.
Robinson wants to
came in the
discuss it
packet,
at a
and then-
later
And it's
date.
in the packet, so,
Can you just describe, put it in?
Okay.
yeah, including the packet. Is there a motion to file and receive, make these reports and communications as part of the minutes of the meeting?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so be it.
First reading of ordinances and resolutions, ordinance F 2015-20, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Evansville, Indiana, appropriating monies for the purpose of defraying the expenditures of departments for the city government for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2016. Ordinance F 2015-21, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Evansville authorizing additional appropriations of funds within various departments. Resolution C 2015-18, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Evansville ratifying the 2016 Consolidated Housing and Community Development Annual Action Plan. Resolution C 2015-19, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Evansville confirming the declaration of an economic revitalization area for property tax phase-in for the rehabilitation of real property and installation of new equipment, 21 at 38 North 6th Street, Evansville, Indiana 47710. Resolution C 2015-20, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Evansville in support of economic development incentives offered to IRD Group Incorporated by the City of Evansville for the rehabilitation of real property and installation of new equipment in the facility at 2138 North 6th Street, Evansville, Indiana 47710. Resolution C 2015-21, a resolution to renaming Dorothy Beard Lane to Lakeview Boulevard.
I will make the observation, I went to MapQuest looking for Dorothy Beard Lane, and I couldn't find it. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda as written?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? So be it. Is there a motion to suspend the rules to hear ordinances F 2015-20, F 2015-21 on all three readings this evening?
And it's F 2015
As amended. Okay, great.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I think there's a roll call on this.
We have to have a roll call.
Yes.
Councilman McGinn? Councilwoman Mosby?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brincroft Riley?
Aye.
Councilwoman Robinson?
Aye.
Councilman Friend?
Aye.
Councilman Lindsay?
Aye.
Councilman O'Daniel?
Aye.
Councilman Weaver?
Aye.
Councilman Adams?
I vote aye. There being 9 ayes and 0 nays, ordinance F 2015-20 as amended and 2015-21 will be heard all three readings this evening.
Consent agenda, second reading of ordinances and resolutions. Ordinance F 2015-20, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Evansville, Indiana, appropriating monies for the purpose of defraying the expenditures of the departments of the city government for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2016.
And Ms. Clerk, if you could hold up there, please.
Yes.
And then, Dr. Adams, I'm asking that you ask for a motion at this time to accept that committee report. I'm asking the council to vote against acceptance of the committee report, and I think that will keep that ordinance alive for third reading.
You're talking about the amended 2015-20.
Accept the
correct?
committee report and move it to a third reading?
No, I'm asking the council not to accept it.
Okay.
and
Is there a
then-
motion not to accept ordinance F 2015-20 as amended?
And let's talk about this and what the practical effect of this is. Okay. So if we do not accept the committee report, the motion, the ordinance with its amendments will still go forward to a third reading.
And then I want to ask for a second motion to that effect.
Okay. And I think that was the legal question that we had to take some time to look at in light of the action of the committee.
That's correct.
And you're okay with that as corporate counsel?
That's correct. I think what we're trying to do here is not accept the committee report so it can move forward on a second and third reading.
Okay, do we have a motion and a second?
I had a motion. Was there a second?
I will then move not to accept the committee report as to F 2015-20 as amended. That would be my motion.
Do we need a second?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The other one is 2015-21.
Ordinance F, 2015-21, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Evansville authorizing additional appropriations of funds within various departments.
Committee report, Chairman O'Daniel.
We met this evening to hear 2015-20 amended, and it comes forward with a do not pass recommendation. However, I would ask that it be moved forward to second and third reading at this time.
I think we need a second on that and then a vote.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
And was F, 2015-21 included in that motion? To forward to third reading?
Third reading, that's
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Third reading?
Third reading of ordinances and resolutions. Ordinance F, 2015-20, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Evansville, Indiana, appropriating monies for the purpose of defraying the expenditures of the budget of the city government for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2016.
Is there any further discussion by City Council at this juncture?
I don't know if corporate counsel wants to say a few words about where we're at and the ramifications of the situation. I know that we've had many discussions on this, and I think, about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, it was government sometimes, and I think the mayor even used this analogy, is like, sometimes it's like, making sausage. It's not always pretty, but sometimes the results are pretty gratifying. So, but nevertheless, it's my understanding that if we vote this down, we have no budget, and there is $1.5 million that are left on the table this year and in the future, correct?
I think what we're trying to do this evening, and the mayor's here to address that, is to have a budget, because if we do not have a budget, you're right, Mr. O'Daniel, there's $1.7 million that will be lost to city government. And so it's very important that we do have a budget, and I think the mayor's here to speak about that.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Thanks for your discussion earlier tonight. It was a community visioning session. As I understand the budgets or the amendments that have been outlined, certainly I am not personally in favor of those, but there's a bigger picture that's involved here, and that is the importance of passing a budget. And while some of these cuts are more than painful, in fact, I think it's impossible at this point to understand the full ramifications of these cuts at this time, but we need a budget. And I appreciate those of you who supported our previous position, but I would urge you in this vote to pass the budget that's been amended and presented to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, members of council?
Any other comments?
I'm sorry.
So what are we voting on? The cuts that you just made, or the cuts that were presented to us before we arrived here today?
The cuts that I presented were voted for, 5-4, in favor of. So that is part of the amended ordinance. The ones that John presented were voted against. They are not part of it. And so the budget that's been presented is the mayor's amendments, including my amendments. And that is what you will be left to decide. This is ultimately, it's a democratic process. We don't always get everything we want, but we live with the decisions that are made by the majority. And in this particular case, the budget, the amendments were passed 5-4. That is the amendment, that is the budget that will be presented to this council. And obviously, individuals can disagree with the particulars of things. I can tell you that it's all done in good faith and with an eye towards moving the city forward. Reasonable minds can differ on that. I understand you probably will. But nevertheless, I would urge council to pass this budget, as sometimes it's more important to have well, in this situation, it's certainly more important to have a budget than not.
Any other comments? Okay. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance F 2015-20 as amended?
So moved.
Second. Okay, let's have a roll call vote.
Councilman McGinn.
I'm never opposed to cutting expenses. I'm opposed to reducing services. I'm opposed to reducing employees. I'm opposed to stretching budgets so thin that they become transparent. I think any major cuts in a budget should also be discussed at the same time with the reasonable increases in taxes so we can continue to provide great services to the people of the city of Evansville. I have not gotten any traction on that. Maybe after an election year, possibly I will on that. But I understand the importance of a budget. I hate doing this, but I promise you if I'm reelected, I'm going to talk about tax increases next year, but I'll vote aye for the budget, so we will have one.
Councilwoman Mosby.
This just, as you all know, I love our city, and I really take all of this to heart, and it just really saddens me. I tried to talk to us in the interim because, you know, I along with several other council members, just found out about some of these cuts coming into this, so I didn't get a chance to talk to all the departments and all the people and all the organizations that these cuts are going to impact. And I'm very sorry to all of you, but I will work with you next year to see what we can do to make things work, to make sure we have what we need to keep certain things going. You know, I hate this, and it goes against most of the things I believe in, but I also know that our main thing as a council member is to pass a budget. And if that's not passed tonight, it's much more detrimental to each and every one of you to have the 1.5 to 1.7 million deficit that we will start into at 2016. And I can't do that to our city of Evansville. I can't do that to any of you sitting here. I can't do that to our public safety. So, again, I hate doing this. I feel like I'm backed up against a wall. But in order to represent you, and I feel this is the best thing to do for the city of Evansville based on what I'm given tonight, I will vote in favor of this budget.
Councilwoman Brinkoff-Riley.
Yeah, I really, congratulations on everybody. I mean, I think people have worked well together and figured out a way to make this work. This is a truly flat budget. It will resemble spending levels of last year. It includes a 1% raise for our employees. Our riverboat fund will have $1 million that will be set aside for emergencies or blight plans or other ways that we creatively come up to use those funds next year. And our local income taxes will spend slightly less than they take in next year. I think it is painful. There's nobody that likes to see adjustments, but they have to be made to deal with the cost of good services and the increases in the cost of doing business that we have no control over. And so I'm grateful to everybody's work. I vote aye.
Councilwoman Robinson.
Aye.
Councilman Friend.
I know there's I remember Jim Price once made this comment many years ago. Everybody remembers Jim, I'm sure. He said, what you do, you fight like hell during the budget process. You work for the best for your constituents and for the taxpayers. And at the end, when it's all said and done, you have to bring forth funding government. You know, we see this in the national setting, what it does do when the government is not properly funded. But I would tell you that I know that this budget, as I'm sitting here, is not balanced by any means, stretch imagination. And I know in my heart of hearts that it's going to be reflective into next year. Now, there have been it won't be quite as bad as it was last year. I think we did a little bit better job than we did last year on it. But last year I regretted that particular vote I made last year on that. And I heard many comments made, well, you know, you voted for this budget, but we didn't write the checks. Not one of us on this council writes checks. People in room 302 write the checks. And when they run out of money, they need to stop writing checks. But we, at this point in time, haven't seen much of that. At least I've with these records I've got right here. But I know, number one, I could be stubborn and I could say, no, I don't agree with this. I'm not going to vote for this. But at the end of the day, it's you got to go by what Jim Price once said. You know, you just got to do the big gulp. You say, well, we got to move forward. But this, I'll vote yay.
Councilman Lindsay?
Well, I'd like to thank Connor and John and Doc and everyone that's worked so hard on this, and the administration. And I agree with John, but I've got something I'd like to say. I'd like to talk about something called sensible budgeting. And what I mean by that is, you know, I'm on the fire department, so I'm kind of in line with what goes on with that department for sure. And I see our physicals go from $50,000 a year before this administration took over to $161,000 a year. That's after Doc and I brought the physicals back down to Deaconess Hospital. They were outsourcing them to Indianapolis, bringing a company down from Indy to do our physicals. I mean, that was a nightmare. That was a logistic nightmare. So anyway, so that's one thing I want to talk about. There's about a $111,000 a year increase. Now, I don't feel 3 times healthier. You know, I don't get that. And then let's talk about this new system that they're putting in called the quartermaster. Now, I worked hard to make sure that didn't get implemented because I knew the direction this was going to go. I knew this was $1 million deal here. I knew how much it was going to cost to implement this system. Now, they want $250,000, okay, for 120 sets of gear. Now, let me put that in perspective for you. We have 243 firefighters in suppression, okay? Now, that's one set for half of them. In 2007, we got most of the guys on the fire department got an extra set. Now, that gear in another 2 years is going to be outdated, 10 years. Now, where is this going to go? I can tell you where it's going to go. This is a $1 million plan right here. Now, this is a plan that wasn't needed. We had it in place for our clothing allowance. All the chief had to do is say, I want everybody in 1 year to have 2 sets of gear, serviceable gear. But they didn't do that. This is their program. So now you're talking about $250,000 that didn't need to be spent. Now you've got another $111,000. There's $361,000 in extra cost for the Evansville Fire Department. That's a pumper. That's an engine. Now, we got trucks on there. They're looking at a truck today that was in 91. Now they got a truck that's a 92 and a 91, and they're trying to figure out which one to junk when they get the new pump. Okay, so I mean that's pretty tough there. That's a 24, 25-year-old truck. Okay, so my point is, you know, sensible budgeting. You know, we try to make cuts that make sense. We shouldn't come down to that. But you've got to, when you do a budget, you've got to realize what's your priorities. This quartermaster wasn't a priority. You know, if they'd followed my lead, which was best for the firefighters, because I'm one of them, I know what we need and what should have been done. Physicals, I don't get that. Let's go with this one real quick. You hire a guy, he's 25 years old. He comes on in June. He goes through his training. He gets his physical to come on, which they have to pay for. And then 6 months later, the entire fire department gets another physical. Now, what happened in 6 months to a 25-year-old man who hasn't fought a fire? Look, you know, where's the common sense and the, you know, there's the cuts that could be made that make sense and could save this city hundreds of thousands of dollars, but nobody looks at that. It's just always just write down a number, give us more money, we know what we're doing, and move on. And we've carried the load here for 4 years. We've been beaten on, you know, we've been abused, and, you know, I'm upset about it because of the simple fact I don't write checks, okay? I don't run my house like this. I had a business for 25 years. I didn't quit because I ran out of money. I quit because I got too old to do it, you know. You know, so, I mean, you can't run anything like this city's been run for the last 4 years, and it's going to happen, and we know it's going to happen. So just remember what this man has told you for 4 years, and you can beat up Connor, you can beat up John, beat anybody up on this council, but they're here because they care about this city. You know, John's a successful businessman, Connor's a successful attorney. What's it in it for them? You know, this will be the first time in January in 30 years that I'll only have one job since I've been a firefighter. I spent 25 years with my own construction company in the Air National Guard and on the fire department. So, I know about work. I know what it takes to succeed. And you don't succeed by spending more money than you bring in. And I vote yes.
He votes aye.
Councilman O'Daniel?
Change is slow and hard, difficult. And, for years we've had ample funds to do just about anything we wanted in this city. The county, not so much. They tightened their belt a decade ago. And honestly, it's time for the city to do the same. I think through clearly administration recognized there was going to be a need for further tightening because they came forward with a budget that was not as large as the previous one they submitted to council. They worked to make appropriate cuts where they thought was necessary and what they thought they could afford. However, I and other members of council felt that deeper cuts were necessary to ensure the fiscal integrity of this city. And we have a robust discussion of this. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people have strong emotions about it, and other people are trying to just do the work that they were elected to do. I'm a big boy. I can take my shots when necessary, and some people have, thrown jabs and haymakers at me, and, you learn in this position, you just have to take it. But I'm happy with the result that we've achieved not only this year, but also last year, and this is step 2 towards bringing our budgets into something that I would call a balanced budget, a true balanced budget. We still exceed expenditures over revenue. I think, even with this roughly $85 million budget, it's still going to take some work on the part of the administration to make sure that they stay within the revenue stream, because I think Russ has indicated that he doesn't expect any more than $80 and $81 million to come in next year. So, we just can't continue to use LIT as a credit card or the riverboat as a credit card or spend in ways that we had become accustomed to. So with that, obviously it was kind of ugly getting to this point tonight, but with that I vote aye.
Councilman Weaver?
I cannot support cuts in pay to our public safety, to our police officers, to our fire department, and to the Mets department. We have a segment of the population that's screaming for Sunday bus service, and if we're going to institute that, we can't start off by not paying the drivers. So I vote no.
Councilman Adams?
Being Irish, it certainly has a tendency for me to vote no with you. But I can't see losing 1.7. And although the votes already are here to make that happen, I have to go along with this, as painful as it really is. And if I'm lucky enough to be reelected, perhaps we can repair this at some later date. I don't think there's a mandate for this at this juncture. But I do want to not lose 1.7, so I vote aye. There being 8 ayes and 9 nays, the motion to adopt F 2015-20 as amended is hereby declared adopted.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
so I've got the Form 4, and we've adjusted for the corrections cuts with the new totals, and there's 5 of these, and each council member would check off whether they vote aye or nay on page 3, so I'll give those to the clerk, but we need 5 of them signed.
Okay.
Tonight.
Yes.
Very well.
Okay. Third reading.
Ordinance F 2015-21, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Evansville authorizing additional appropriations of funds within various departments.
Is there a motion to adopt ordinance F
I think-
2015?
Kelly, did you have some motion or some amendments you wanted to make on the floor?
If I could, not always.
I apologize.
It's all council meeting so far.
I apologize, Kelly.
I need for council to make an amendment to this ordinance I didn't get the proposal in time to get it to the clerk's office to amend the finance ordinance. So to account for the clerk's benefit, it'll go to account 2317227-439050. It's $42,240 out of prior year CDBG, which will be for HOPE's program. For 2 years, I've been trying to figure out how to help Habitat with some of our federal dollars. And what we figured out and we cleared with HUD is that we can assist the home buyer. We're not putting money in the construction, but we're assisting the home buyer with their down payment to, number one, bring them closer to a paid-for home, but number two, Habitat can take that additional down payment on each of these 16 homes that they're going to build next year and put that money towards homes later. And then in that amendment, for each one of those homes comes education and financial literacy for each home buying family. So there's not only the down payment assistance, but there's the financial education piece that'll come out of that $42,240.
And because this is at third reading now, we have to accept the amendment, it has to be by 2/3, is my understanding. So,
or unanimously.
Well, it should be unanimous, but I mean just not for.
Suspend the first, second, third?
Well, we've already done that. We've already done that, but now it's past second reading. To do an amendment, you have to have 2/3 to accept the amendment.
You're absolutely right. Thank you.
Are there any questions about the other pieces of this? We're going to add a little bit to the Haney's Corner parking lot, 91.7, in order to recapture $230,000 from the water and sewer utility, because the new engineering that we've done on that parking lot, we're going to capture 1 million gallons of stormwater with the paving system that we're doing there with the brick pavers and the underlayment. We'll capture stormwater from both Washington and Adams Avenue. So we're spending a little bit more of CDBG, but we're going to recapture that out of the water and sewer utility. And then the focus neighborhood money is to complete a sewer connection for a home building project Memorial's doing on Washington Avenue. We can't use home dollars for sewer connections, but we can use CDBG for that.
What year did you find these funds in?
2011.
Amazing. Okay. We need a vote for that amendment? Is there a motion to accept the amendment?
I just have a point of clarification.
I apologize.
You're adding 42,240 to the top, so instead of...
Yes, the top number will be 158,940 instead of 110,700.
Okay, thank you.
Do I need a vote? We need to vote on the amendment? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, any other comments from my colleagues? Okay, I'll entertain a motion and a second for this amendment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have the amendment. It's part of F 2015-21.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adopt ordinance F 2015-21 as amended? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilman McGinn?
Point of order, I thought we had to vote to suspend the rules.
We did on this earlier, I think.
We did, we did them both earlier.
Yeah.
I vote aye.
Councilwoman Mosby?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brinkoff Riley?
Aye.
Councilwoman Robinson?
Aye.
Councilman Friend?
Aye.
Councilman Lindsay?
Aye.
Councilman O'Daniel?
Aye.
Councilman Weaver?
Aye.
Councilman Adams?
I vote aye. There being 9 ayes and 0 nays, ordinance F 2015-21 is hereby declared adopted. Miscellaneous business. The next meeting of the Common Council will be Monday, November 9th, 2015 at 5:30. Committee meetings will begin at 5:05. Is there any other additional business that you would want to discuss tonight? Seeing no one, let's go to our... Are you going to talk, sir, or not? No? Okay, fine.
I just want, like
Oh,
I
I
said
apologize.
earlier, I wanted this in the record. I mean, I don't usually address things that we get an anonymous letter from, but I find it disturbing that we had this in our packet, and whoever put this in, sent it to the clerk's office for it to be in our packet. I wish they'd come forward, because I find it very offensive that our fire chief is dressed as an African American with a bottle of liquor in his hand. And I'm truly to think that he's a department head protecting us, and I don't know why he thought he had to be portrayed as an African American. To me, it is an insult to African American, and it doesn't show favor. It doesn't show favor on this city.
Anyone else make a comment at this juncture on this particular subject? Okay. Committee reports?
Okay, I got a little ahead of myself, but I've caught back up. We'll be starting out at 5:05 on November the 9th, Resolution C-2015-21, renaming Dorothy Beard Lane to Lakeview Boulevard. Thank you.
Finance Committee, Chairman O'Daniel?
Yes, at 5:10, we'll hear F 2015-21. Actually, we just did that one, sorry. At 5:15, we'll hear C 2015-19, which is an economic redevelopment phase-in for the IRD group at 2138 North 6th Avenue. 5:20, we'll hear C 2015-20, which is in support of economic development incentives for the same property and company. And at 5:25, C 2015-18 is ratifying the Consolidated Housing and Community Development Action Plan.
ASD Committee, Chairman Brinker-Hoff-Riley.
Thank you, Mr. President. At 5:25, we'll hear Ordinance G 2015-22. That's amending Chapter 2.160 of the Information Technology. That's the Evansville Municipal Code.
The famous IT.
Yeah, no, it lives on.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
All those in favor?
Find us on Facebook and follow our Twitter accounts, WNIN and WNIN News.
There are some wonders which stand out as the most extreme. And they're places which test their inhabitants to the limit.
Twice as Good with Hadley and Delaney is brought to you by Mila. Emma Besser, Forever Better. Miva. And by Cuties. Cute you can eat. Cuties. And by KitchenWorks. Wherever we go, that's where the party's at. KitchenWorks.
As always, don't forget the first 4 rules of kids cooking. 1. Wash your hands. 2. Ask an adult for help, especially with hot items, sharp utensils, and appliances. 3. Don't be afraid to try new ingredients, especially if they are green. And 4. Have fun. These 4 rules make cooking twice as healthy and twice as good. Hi, I'm Delaney. And I'm Hadley. And this is Twice as Good. Today, our show is all about F-R-U-I-T. Fruit. Why a whole show about fruit? Because it's so delicious. And fruit has incredible health benefits that you won't find in store-bought prepackaged items like cookies or chips. Hopefully, before we're done, we'll introduce you to some exotic new fruits that you've never tried before. Let's get started. Our first recipe is a fun way to impress without any mess. Dragon fruit jellies. Dragon fruit is also known as strawberry pear or pitaya. It's named Mexico, Latin America, and Asia. Dragon fruit is the fruit of a cactus plant. See, the outside is hot pink and it's green and yellow leaves. Dragon fruit has a mild, sweet flavor that's very similar to kiwi and honeydew melon. Since we need to use the stove, Mimi will be helping us make our delightful dragon fruit jelly snacks today. Our first step is to combine the gelatin with a half cup of water. This is called blooming the gelatin. The reason we bloom our gelatin is to make sure that it dissolves evenly and doesn't make any yucky clumps in our jellies. Now we're going to combine 1/2 cup of sugar with 1 cup of water in our saucepan. Mimi, can you bring sugar and water to a boil, please?
Okay, and how much water have we got here? A cup?
A cup.
Okay, Hadley, we have how much sugar here?
That's 1/4 cup of sugar, and it will need 2 to make a half. Here's a fun science fact. The universe is made out of matter that comes in 3 forms: solid, liquid, and gas. When you add a solid sugar to the water, it actually changes form and becomes a liquid. If too much air gets into the sugar and water mixture, the bubbles cause big crystals or clumps to form. Once the sugar dissolved, it's time to add bloom gelatin. Here's our gelatin, Mimi.
Okay.
We'll let everything cook for a couple of minutes. Mimi, it's time to add our star ingredient.
I was hoping you would say that.
Oh, I love dragon fruit. Yes, and so do I.
Here they go. Have you ever seen a prettier color than this? I'm going to just put the rest right in there. Put this over here. And stir it till it softens up a little bit.
Once it's in, you need to cook everything together and keep stirring it for about another 5 minutes. Making these dragon fruit jellies feels like we're conducting an amazing science experiment and a fun cooking class at the same time. In science, baking soda is what's known as a base and vinegar as an acid. When you mix an acid and a base together, it causes a chemical reaction that produces a gas called carbon dioxide. which creates a big bubbling batch of frothy foam. Scientists can see whether something is an acid or base using litmus paper, which is specially treated to turn different colors depending on what they're exposed to. This is called a pH test. And you can actually make your own litmus paper out of fruit. Put a fourth a cup of blackberries into a zipper bag and mash them up. Sister switch.
Is that fun, girls?
It's so fun. You do
Yes. All right. That's fun. Yes.
Now just a bit of water to loosen things up. Mimi, do you want to pour it in a bowl for us?
I think you all did a really fantastic job squishing up all this fruit.
Thank you. You can eat this blackberry juice.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Now we'll dip some white strips of construction paper into the blackberry. Here are some we made the other day that have already dried. Now in this glass, we've got some dish soap mixed with some water. And in this one, we have some vinegar. Let's see what color it turns. Wow, the soapy water turns kind of a grayish blue color. Let's see this one. Wow, who knew fruit could be so smart? Now that the dragon fruit's had time to cook with our gelatin mixture, we're ready to put it into our molds.
It's very hot. Now, this is important that you would never, ever do this without an adult.
We're using this flexible silicone mold that makes individual jellies. You can use any shape you'd like, or you can use a large baking dish instead and cut your treats into squares or shapes once they've cooled or set. Now that the molds are filled, we'll put them in the refrigerator for them to cool. It takes about 3 hours for them to set. This fresh and fruity candy is so much more dandy than store-bought items. I can't wait to try it. Next up are Snack Attack apple chips. They are amazing. We just love apples. They taste great, are great for you, and have that wonderful raw crunch. But there are other fun and healthy ways to enjoy them too. This next recipe is one of our all-time favorite lunchbox treats. But before we get started, hand wash time! We always wash our hands before we get cooking, but did you know you should wash fruit before you cook or eat it too? Now, the first thing we have to do with our nice clean apples is to core them. This is an apple core, and we're going to use it to take out the apple seeds and the stem in one swoop. Mimi is going to help us.
Okay, girls, I love your apple cores. Let's see how they work. We'll put them in the center. Okay, here it comes. There, perfect.
So easy.
It is easy.
The next step would be to cut the apples into very thin slices. But to be safe, we always let a grown-up slice or chop things for us. Here are some apples that Mimi sliced for us earlier. Apple science fact: the skin of an apple keeps the inside from being exposed to air. When you cut an apple, the seal is broken and the natural sugars inside react to the oxygen in the air. The result? Yucky brown apples. But we're going to make a tasty syrup to soak our apple slices in so they don't turn brown. We'll start by dissolving a little bit of honey in some water. We already have our water in the bowl here. So pretty. We're just going to whisk it all up. This is really sticky.
Girls, could I give you a little hand here? Okay, girls, looks like it's incorporated now. What do you think?
Yes.
All right.
Once the honey disappears, we'll be ready to add some citrus. Lemons, limes, and oranges all have a natural acid called citric acid. When citric acid combines with the sugar in the apple, it stops a chemical reaction that turns it brown. Let's whisk it all up. Once we've combined the citrus with our honey and water mixture, it's time to put in our apple slices. Remember how the last time we made apple chips, they were in a jar for an hour and then they were all gone? That's right. They should soak for about 20 to 30 minutes. In order to crisp the chips, we're going to dehydrate them. That means we're going to slowly remove the moisture from the apples by drying them in the oven. We've lined the cookie sheet with a silicone mat to keep these apples from sticking. If you don't have a silicone mat, you can use wax paper or aluminum foil instead. These smell delicious, especially after they soaked in our orange lemon mixture. Once our apples are laid out as pretty as picture, it's time to put them in the oven to dry.
All right, girls, I've preheated the oven to 200 degrees. How long should we bake them?
It cooks for 3 hours. That's 180 minutes. By baking these apple chips at a low temperature for a long time, they'll get really crispy. We made this batch of apple chips earlier. Let's try one. I bet they're going to be great. Delicious. This is so good. When your apple chips come out of the oven, cool them and store them in an airtight container. If there are any left, that is. Our next fun fruity recipe is a twice as good twist on fruit pies that takes real teamwork. Sister, sister, fruity tarts. To make our tarts, we'll start with the refrigerated pie crust that Mimi timed the circles for us earlier. We're using mini tart pans today. See how the bottoms and the tops come apart? That's so your tarts will pop right out like this once they're baked. Put the crust into the pan, then just use your finger to press it into the waist along the side of the pan. Chef's trick, take a fork and poke some holes into the pie crust like so. This is called docking. Bake the tart crust for 8 to 10 minutes at 375 degrees, and then let them cool. But we have some that have already been baked. Mimi did it for us, and they've already cooled. To make the filling, we're going to start with some healthy, delicious, low-fat vanilla yogurt. We'll flavor the yogurt with some apricot preserves, my favorites. Yes, you love apricot preserves on toast, right? And you love grape jelly on toast. Yes. And just a touch of whipped cream to make our filling light and fluffy. It's so fun squeezing it out of a pastry bag. Give it just a couple of good stirs to mix it all up. Only about 4 stirs, or your whipped cream won't be as fluffy and it will lose its magic touch. Let's just scoop some into our tart shells. You just want to shake it a bit. And then another one. Just shake that. Harley, let's use our spoon to flatten it. Good idea, Delaney. I think we put the perfect amount. Yes, because we're saving room for the best part of all. Fruit